to another edition of Ask Michael Eline. This is where I teach people the law in an unorthodox manner by using examples that we see in the news, case law briefs, but it's all about exposing the Leviathan and its instrumentalities and taking back your rights. Know the law and mean to keep it well. Come here to learn from an expert to know your right. Make sure to like and subscribe. Make sure to save, because we never know when the thought police are going to take down this channel. Hey, everybody. So I am attorney Michael Eline. As you guys know, I am an attorney licensed in California and Texas. Hold on a minute. And I just got done working out at Powerhouse, so I'm a little drained right now, but I'm glad I did it. Tell you guys, man, you need to get to the gym, you need to train, you need to take care of yourselves. Buddy of mine, Life Under the Microscope, has got me back into the carnivore diet. I used to be big time into the paleo thing. So hopefully you'll see my face leaning out over the next couple of weeks, getting squared away. So what's going on in the news? Okay, so we've got all kinds of Senate confirmation hearings. As you guys probably know, I am a government accountability lawyer. My primary focus as far as my law practice goes is catastrophic injury and personal injury claims. So I help people, especially military vets who have been in motorcycle accidents. But my love and my passion is natural law and natural law advocacy. And so I homeschool my kids. I'm a natural law advocate. I believe in homesteading and homeschooling and keeping your family and kids as far away from these Marxist, communist government education, re-education camps as possible. I believe that it's parents' role to teach their kids about sex and all that other stuff, not somebody who just graduated from UCLA or Princeton with a far left Che Guevara agenda. Give me a bunch of ones if you agree with that. Now, that being said, hey, Life Under, good seeing you. Good seeing you, Avery. Good seeing you, Lynn. I know it's early, but I promised the kids that I'd take them out today. I've got to get my son a new phone. He's got an old school Android phone from back in the day. So, and my daughter, she's a girl. And, that's one thing about homeschooling is when the kids are home all the time, especially girls, you got to get them out. You got to let them experience, a little bit of the world, as long as they have dad there who's locked and loaded. And that's what this show is about today, about being locked and loaded. So many of you know, I definitely don't support Dementia Joe. I don't support globalism, the WEF and the WHO, Bill Gates and his scumbag buddies over at Google and Facebook. And obviously I support more of Trump's policies than I do of the Marxist Democrats. But the issue that I have is that, Trump, he essentially is a Democrat from the Northeast, a Northeastern Democrat from the old school. So he's more of a traditional Democrat before the Marxists and the college types took over the party. Give me a bunch of ones if you agree. And part of that is being heavy on gun control, unfortunately, because the only type of gun control I believe in is me putting rounds down range and keeping my front sight tip lined up with the target. And that's true gun control. Give me a bunch of ones if you agree. Hopefully you guys like my cool shirt that I wore today. Patriotism is not a crime. And I got the cool symbol going on. What do you guys think, huh? Arr! Yeah. So a lot of you guys may or may not know I used to be in the Corps, love the Marines, and I love patriotism, but I consider myself to be more of a libertarian. So don't hate on me if I say a few negative things about Trump. I'll say far less negative things about him than I would about Sleepy Joe, who I believe was an absolute disgrace and that he committed the worst geopolitical disaster of all history by selling us out to the Taliban terrorist enemy and leaving them billions of dollars worth of equipment and getting several of my Marine Corps brothers killed towards the end and leaving them all that equipment. What a joke. And then, of course, seeing CNN, Communist News Network, and PMSNBC try and blame Trump for that. Being a Marine, it's like, you got to be kidding me. They're trying to blame the guy who was in charge last time for what this idiot, Sleepy Dementia Joe did. No, what a joke. What a disgrace. Give me a bunch of ones if you guys agree that the guy is an absolute disgrace and he has no place in our history as being a good leader. What a joke that guy is. What an absolute disgrace. So You see here. So, guys, I also, just so you know, I'm going to be working today because I am behind. I've got a couple of briefs that are due, but I made it to the gym, so I feel good. That's the number one thing, guys. If, you guys have seen me do my lawyer workouts at like 04, 05 in the morning, but I also like to work out with weights at a regular gym. And so today I had an opportunity to do that. So I'm feeling pretty good, feeling a little tired. Hey, Reluctant Prophet, good seeing you, brother. By the way, Reluctant Prophet, happy Saturday to you too, brother. Um, I want to talk to you a little bit about Mr. Gold, because I found some additional research about the drug cartels and how they've influenced judicial elections as well as political elections heavily in Arizona. And I wanted to talk to you more about these underground tunnel complexes. I know of at least one lawyer who sort of disappeared off the radar after he exposed that family members of judges who were voting against Kerry Lake, right, voting to maintain the Marxist Democrat power in Arizona, who we all know are heavily influenced by the drug cartels, according to a lot of evidence, that this one lawyer who exposed it, all of a sudden he disappeared. And I've been trying to get a hold of him, and he's just off the radar. So I want to definitely talk to you about that, RP. I think there's something going on. I'm very, very frightened for you guys and people like Mr. Gold, because, we know that absolute power corrupts absolutely. And we know that a lot of lawyers are just egomaniacs, unfortunately, which makes me really sad. Oh, okay, no problem. No problem. Okay, RP, no sweat. I definitely want to talk. I definitely want to find out more about it. So if anybody has any information about that, I'd like to know because it's pretty scary. But anyways, guys, so Reluctant Prophet, I'm glad I have him here. I'm still not done covering your last few videos where you've got these construction workers who are violating the local building ordinances and codes with respect to early construction. But I definitely want to cover that some more. And no problem. Yeah, I agree with you, Lynn. He needs to be left alone. I'm just concerned that if we don't put some sunlight, it's like Dracula, right? If you don't expose corruption with sunlight, it will fester. And so, but I'm with you. I'm not somebody who wants to suck someone in to something that they don't want to be involved in. That's why I always ask first, and I make sure it's okay to even say, hey, I talked to this person or not. I'm not even going to, until I have permission from someone to discuss a private conversation I've had with them, I'm not going to talk about it. And I think you guys should all respect that about other people too. It's really, really important. The best way to lose friends is to spill the beans and tell other people what they said to you. Give me a bunch of ones if you agree. We need to have common decency and integrity. And that's why people trust me and they know they can count on me. People come to me with their deepest, darkest secrets because they know that I'm not going to expose them. Because that's part of being a good man, is you keep other people's business if they've confided in you to yourself. Don't be a gossip. It's in the Bible, for crying out loud. Thousands of years of wisdom behind those words, guys. All right. Give me a bunch of ones if you agree with that too. Give me a bunch of twos if you think it's okay to expose private conversations that other people have had with you for your own personal gain. Because if so, this is probably the wrong channel for you. Okay, so today we're gonna talk about. Stellar says, "Can you talk about how most lawyers suck?" Oh, I don't know about that, Stellar. My experience, so I became a lawyer with no law degree or undergrad. And after I was already a practicing attorney, I got a Juris Doctorate by going to law school at night. So what I learned is that law schools don't really teach you the history of law. They definitely don't teach you about our founding fathers and their vision for our country. And our public schools stopped teaching about the history of our great republic, which is the reason for our Revolutionary War, contrary to what you may think, is because the king tried to seize our gunpowder, our powder houses. He tried to go after our guns because he knew if the people had the ability to resist him, he would not be able to put down a revolt. And that's the number one thing with all tyrannical rulers, is they want to make sure their people are incapable of rebelling against them. And so I have a real problem with Pam Bondi, and we're going to get into this, guys. We're going to get into Pam Bondi. And also, my friend Dick Heller's coming out for the SHOT Show. And I know he's a Trump supporter, and I can't blame him. I mean, how could you ever support the left knowing like just how crazy they are, trying to force people to take experimental drugs, making sure that active duty military who don't want to take experimental medications get fired. Same with like 500 LA firefighters who got fired because they refused to take an experimental drug. And and then we're hearing all these stories about people being harmed from things like that, and it being covered up and buried by social media sites and stuff like that. It's like, come on, guys, give me a break. So naturally, you can't support someone like that because that's tyrannical, right? Give me a bunch of ones if you agree it's tyrannical that the government can force you to do something and then destroy your life if you don't want to go along with their program, from people who paid them in political campaign donations for those favors to make sure that you would have to take something that's government subsidized so they make billions while you lose your business while the economy's shut down. That's something that I just definitely can't agree with. Now, Reluctant Prophet says, friends are one thing, but I talk to a lot of people. Oh, I got you. No, I'm not talking about you, bro. I'm talking about when, especially me being a lawyer, when people come to me in confidence and they want to share something with me, I always keep it in confidence. Yeah, absolutely. Now there's other people like Reluctant Prophet and who's that other guy? Kevin, what's his name? The guy who records people like government officials where he keeps catching them. Like he'll send like one of his gay dudes to meet with one of these gay FBI or CIA agents, and they'll spill the beans about how they went after Alex Jones and they had to make sure to help the judge and the jury and basically, buy off everybody to make sure Alex Jones would go bankrupt and stuff like that. I mean, unbelievable stuff that these guys are saying on camera. And obviously those are government officials and there are public servants. And the whole point of the First Amendment was to expose them. So I'm super happy about stuff like that. If you're exposing corrupt government, Reluctant Prophet, well, that's precisely what the First Amendment mandates you to do. Just remember, guys, that every state has its own recording laws. So, for example, if you're recording my call and you're in California, then that's a criminal violation unless I agree. So if you're recording people's phone calls from California, that is a crime unless the other person agrees. The other person has to give you consent. Now, in other states, I think in Nevada, only one party has to consent. However, unless both parties consent, it can't be used for purposes of litigation. So you need to really understand the law to make sure you don't get yourself caught in some kind of, what do they call it, a honey trap? Anyways, just be careful when you guys are doing this, because what I don't want you to do is end up calling me saying, hey, I need a lawyer because I did something that I thought I was allowed to do. Yeah, but RP, I'm sure you know more. Yeah, James O'Keefe. That's right, bro. James O'Keefe. So yeah, don't think I'm talking about you. I'm talking about, well, like when I meet with people, for example, that maybe you referred to me, unless they tell me specifically I have the right to discuss things, I'm not going any further than that. I'm always going to make sure, but I have additional duties as an officer of the court and as a lawyer to make sure I get permission. Just so you guys know, it's not a free for all when you're doing this stuff. You really need to know what you're doing. All right. So yeah, Arizona's a one party. Right on. Hey Stomper, good seeing you, brother. Right on, guys. I'm super happy to see all you guys. I'll be honest, this is one of those days where I'm going out, take the wife and kids out. And so this is the only time I had to be able to run a show. And I'm going to be working over here trying to get some hours in so I can pay the bills, until somehow I can retire from my YouTube channel, which I doubt it will ever happen. This is how it's going to be, guys. But this Pam Bondi thing really has me worried. I think she's a sharp lady, but I absolutely 1 billion% disagree with her views on the Second Amendment and self-defense. And it terrifies me that Donald Trump would have the audacity to try and put somebody with her views on the Second Amendment into a position of so much power after he basically hoodwinked guys like me and the Gun Owners Association of America, Dick Heller versus DC, a good friend of mine, and a lot of Marines that I rallied to help get rid of Sleepy Joe and Camel Toe. And now he's basically putting someone into the Attorney General that is going to do the same exact things all the Democrats have been doing, which is to try to restrict and infringe upon our Second Amendment rights, in my opinion. So I don't support her for different reasons than the Marxist Democrats. I support, see, I'm more of a single issue type voter. You leave me alone with a couple thousand rounds of ammo and my firearms, and I don't need much from you in the way of government. I can protect my own family when right, guys? The police are always 15 minutes away when seconds count. So I count on myself and my God granted rights to be able to defend my family. And when I see somebody like Bondi come along, as we're going to, hey, Mark 180, good seeing you from England. Well, you know what's going on in England. I mean, your government's flooded your country with jihadis, two-tier cure, and they've even threatened to arrest Americans if they say negative things about it. And they control the news media there, the BBC. So you've been brainwashed to a large degree, the people in your country, to think that you're a racist or a bigot if you don't want people who are jihadists to destroy your country. Somehow that makes you a bad person. So I feel for you, man, and I can see it happening here in this country as well. But it looks like we've got a pretty decent audience today. We've got about 89 people. So I'm going to go ahead and start the first video, which is from the Gun Owners Association of America, where we talk a little bit about Pam Bondi. I think it's about 19 or 20 minutes. I'm going to be working on some briefs, but look, if anybody has questions, obviously super chats go to the front of the line, even if it's $1. Just if I see a little blue or yellow thing pop up, hey, it's $1 for my family, right? That's how I think. And I'll answer the question as soon as I can. Just understand that this is a working sort of YouTube channel for me right now until I can get ahead. I'm about 2 weeks behind on briefs and paperwork because I took time to go visit grandma down in San Diego with my daughter. So that really just, not that it's a bad thing because I'm here working, but just know I'm not going to be totally focused on yak, 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 yak the whole time. But one thing I have noticed, the less I yak, it seems like the more people view my channel. So maybe you guys don't want me talking as much as I normally do. But let me just look before I get the video going. Johnny Hankey, yes, we need to spread freedom seeds in the UK. Well, the first thing you need to do is send all those sub-Saharan Africans who force their wives to wear hefty bags and are on permanent welfare back to their countries, right? Send them all out of your country because they don't support English common law. They support a jihadist takeover of your government. I've seen the videos. Two-tier Kier knows exactly what's going on. And you've got King Charles, who has basically betrayed his people with his support of the World Economic Forum and the WHO, which is also run by a guy who was a member of a registered terrorist organization, Islamic terrorist organization. And those are the guys that your king has buddied up with. So, King Charles has a lot of splaining to do, Lucy. So, yeah, Sharia law, that's what they want. They want Sharia law. And if you say that, you'll have the British thought police come to your home and arrest you while these guys are out having these RAPE gangs and your government's so terrified to expose these Islamic RAPE gangs. They don't want to be accused of being racist, so they buried it and covered it up. King Charles needs to dissolve Parliament and allow the British people to take back their country. Give me a bunch of ones if you agree. If you're a British patriot and you're sick and tired of being called a racist simply because you support your countrymen and your people, give me a bunch of ones because I support you too. One of our greatest allies became the Brits, and I'm really, really sad to see that Sharia law is actually happening and that you've got these scumbags from foreign countries flooding into your country, having their way with your women. It makes me disgusted. And just think if you guys had a Second Amendment there, how there'd be a lot less of them to do that. They would be terrified to mess with your kids. That's the issue. That's what the government doesn't want. They don't want you to have the ability to fight against tyranny. So that's the problem, right, guys? That's right. All right. So now let me get into it, guys. By the way, give me a bunch of ones for Reluctant Prophet and Lane Myers, guys. I mean, what a breath of fresh air, man. Gee whiz. I mean, these guys really put it to the freaking lefties and to their corrupt Arizona local officials. All right, let's get into the next video. Here we go.
The Senate Judiciary Committee is holding hearings on Pam Bondi's nominations on January 15th and 16th.
As well as mental health, which is huge. It has a gun violence restraining order in there. It raises the age of purchasing an assault rifle to 21, and it's banning bump stocks. We've been rewriting it, and we are going to bring in something called the gun violence restraining order. And hopefully Congress will follow Florida's lead and what Governor Scott's been doing here in Florida, and all of us working so well together.
Now, a lot of gun owners haven't been the biggest supporter of her nomination, given her past mixed record on the Second Amendment. Today, we're going to dive into Pam Bondi's record on the Second Amendment and talk about what gun owners really need from President Trump's Department of Justice. Hi, I'm Ben, and you're watching the Minuteman Moment. So what are gun owners saying about Pam Bondi? Well, the Second Amendment community has become one of, if not the most vocal sources of criticism for Attorney General nominee Pam Bondi. For example, the new ex-AI Gronk described Bondi as having a mixed record regarding gun laws. And I think conservative CNN co-host Sir Michael Shingleton expressed everyone's concerns pretty well when he said, many leaders and activists in the 2A community worked hard to engage gun owners who don't typically vote for Trump. And from everyone I've spoken to, they feel betrayed and are angry about Bondi's nomination. Even former NRA spokeswoman Dana Lausch and Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton criticized Pam Bondi on her radio show.
Why in the hell are we even entertaining anybody that has zero respect for due process for Attorney General? Were people not bent over a barrel and told to grab their ankles for Merrick Garland enough? Were we all not abused enough by the DOJ? Parents who spoke up at town halls. Did you like the fact that you were labeled a domestic terrorist because you showed interest in protecting your sons and daughters in front of the school board? Did you like the fact that you were presumed to be a threat or to be guilty of something before being able to plead your case and have the FBI clear you of that tag? Because that's red flag law in practice. If you hated that, you're going to hate what she promoted.
And even more gun influencers piled on and described Bondi's record as a horrible history of abuse of power. So what is actually causing this much outrage among gun owners? Well, the hard truth is, Pam Bondi does have a mixed record on guns. For example, Pam Bondi praised the Parkland gun control, which included red flag gun confiscation orders, an 18 to 20-year-old gun ban, and a useless bump stock ban.
As well as mental health, which is huge. It has a gun violence restraining order in there. It raises the age of purchasing an assault rifle.
So here's the problem with this whole mental health narrative. Your political enemies can just declare you to be incompetent or crazy. And that's what they're trying to do with Lane Myers. That's what they're trying to do with Reluctant Prophet. That way they can force an attorney on you that you don't want. So this whole thing is a scam as far as I'm concerned. These red flag laws. All you have to do is declare your political enemies to be crazy. And by the way, most people I've spoken to on the left think that all gun owners are crazy. They think that the police are going to protect them, while at the same time they're lobbying and rallying to have the police abolished. So to me, that's crazy, right? I mean, you can't, talking out of both sides of your mouth is crazy. Anyways, let's get back into the video. I want to hear what you guys have to say.
To 21, and it's banning bump stocks.
Okay, now that's a comprehensive approach. I got it, and that's what you're about to do that.
And also, as a state attorney general, Pam Bondi defended Florida's 18 to 20-year-old gun ban in NRA versus Bondi, and fought to uphold Florida's unconstitutional ban on open carry in Norman v. State. Now, Norman v. State was a particularly disturbing case where a black man was brutally arrested and charged for open carry, simply because his firearm was accidentally exposed while he was peaceably concealed carrying. Check out the video of his arrest.
Put your hands up!
Also, to make matters seemingly worse, Pam Bondi also helped then-Governor Rick Scott, who still hasn't apologized for his infringements on the Second Amendment, draft a gun violence restraining order, aka a gun confiscation law in Florida.
We've been rewriting it, and we are going to bring in something called the gun violence restraining order. So if someone is civilly committed typically you can hold them for up to 72 hours, but people are getting out within 24 hours, the majority of them. So what we want to do is let law enforcement come in and take the guns.
Good.
They're a danger to themselves.
Which you can't do right now.
Well, because without being adjudicated. So because they're a danger to themselves.
You want them to take the guns and
when they are
not go through 6 months of legal trials and everything.
Exactly. But we also have to give the mentally ill the due process in which they deserve, President. So what we're doing is they're going to be able to take the guns when they're taken into custody or into the hospital. And then when they're released within 24 hours or 72 hours later, typically it's 24 hours, but law enforcement will have 72 hours to determine whether they should give those guns back, or they can go to a judge and say, Your Honor, please keep these guns. We feel this person is still a danger to himself or others.
So this would not have worked the way it's current.
So, guys, this really blows me away. So you've got a president who is politically targeted by far left Marxist Democrats who did everything they could to get felony convictions against him on just trumped up bullshit. If you actually look at the New York case and all these other cases, it's just a joke. They're all George Soros prosecutors. And basically the roadmap to destroying your political enemies, the first time in history. And this guy is literally going to allow that to happen to you? I don't think so. That's why I do not support Pam Bondi. I mean, this blows my mind that this guy would even entertain such an idea after he was just politically targeted by George Soros, the World Health Organization, and the World Economic Forum to interfere with his election. And now here he's going, putting in an attorney general who could establish the same type of lawfare to have your guns taken away by your political enemies, by people who don't agree with the Second Amendment, by people who don't agree with your politics. I don't think so. No, absolutely not. Insane. Absolutely
this would not
insane.
have worked with Cruz as it's currently constituted.
As it's currently written.
So you're going to make changes?
We're going to make changes.
Well, the simple answer is that gun owners want to see more pro-Second Amendment stances from Pam Bondi. And it turns out she's pretty good at defending the Second Amendment when she wants to. She's done it many times on television. Let's take a look at that side of Pam Bondi that gun owners need to see more of. First off, we need help protecting the Second Amendment in the courts. As Florida's Attorney General, Pam Bondi signed amicus briefs opposing Connecticut's semi-automatic weapons ban and Florida's ban on selling handgun and ammunition to 18 to 20-year-old adults. Gun owners want to know that President Trump's Attorney General be on the right side of cases like Bruin and Rahimi when they're taken up by the high court. We also need help in state courts beating concealed carry restrictions, assault weapons bans, magazine capacity limits, handgun rosters, and more. So if Pam Bondi did it before, and if Pam Bondi plans to do it again, we'd really like to hear about it at her confirmation hearing and before she gets to a confirmation vote on the floor. Secondly, Pam Bondi needs to get with the program. Nationwide Republicans do not support red flag laws, and Congress isn't like the Florida supermajority of rhino legislators, and we need an attorney general who won't compromise on gun confiscation laws. And actually, we've seen Pam Bondi defend our right to bear arms and defend ourselves while criticizing President Biden for pushing red flag gun confiscation laws and assault weapon bans.
It's a fundamental right. It is our right to bear arms and to defend ourselves. And, you know, it's interesting, the Joe Biden of the 80s, who we seem to like a lot more, who said that, yeah, you're not going to take guns out of the hands of criminals, was absolutely correct. You know, Pete, when I was a young prosecutor, way before I was Attorney General, I was in my early 20s, I had a stalker. For years. I don't talk about it a lot, but I learned to shoot from law enforcement. They taught me to shoot because I didn't have the luxuries that Hillary Clinton has, that Joe Biden has, of full-time protection. And I had to learn to shoot a gun to protect myself. My stalker ultimately committed suicide. That's how serious it was. But I deserve the right to protect myself, as do all Americans in their homes, to be safe. And that's what the Second Amendment says. And that's what Heller says loud and clear, the Heller opinion from 2008. And I find it astonishing that they keep our borders wide open and they let criminals come into this country. They let cartels in, they let gangs in, and illegal guns are coming into our country that way. And it's okay for that to happen, but not for law-abiding citizens to have guns.
So if Pam Bondi has been opposing Biden's recent gun grabs, that's at least a good start. Now, we want to hear how she plans to oppose red flag laws with her office. Specifically, gun owners want to know how the DOJ will stop bribing pro-gun states to pass gun confiscation laws using the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. Due to GOA and congressional oversight, we know that the due process requirements are not being adhered to, and the whole program needs to be investigated for waste. So, will Pam Bondi be rescinding those funds and punishing the bureaucrats responsible? Also, gun owners want to hear that Pam Bondi supports the Second Amendment rights of all law-abiding adults. Florida passed an 18 to 20-year-old gun ban, and she defended it in court. But at the same time, check out this clip where Pam Bondi pushed back against Neil Cavuto, calling for cracking down on gun ownership. Instead, she correctly points out that anyone can make a weapon.
So far not talked about this move that others have to sort of find a way to get a crackdown on gun ownership. Even conservative senators, conservative newspapers and editorial boards, the New York Post and others have said, we've got to get a handle on this. Do you think he should say something like it? Do you think that this is bigger than just a mental health issue, that we've got to rein in the number of guns out there?
I think mental health is at the root of it. I've been a prosecutor, as you know, since I was in my early 20s. I had a stalker for 4 years. And when I was in my early 20s, I had to defend myself. I got a gun. I learned how to shoot a gun. My father gave me a gun. The law enforcement taught me how to shoot it. I had to defend myself for 4 years from someone who was after me. And he ultimately ended up jumping off a bridge and killing himself. So from personal experience, I believe everyone should be allowed to defend themselves. As to the assault rifles, this person had no business having one because of his mental health issues. I sat on the President's Opioid Commission, and I will continue to say our country is lacking in mental health for our citizens. We're lacking. We've got to do more. We've got to be able to ensure people to get the mental health that they need. So this to you is, I just want to be clear, you agree, it seems with the president, it's a mental health issue. It's not a guns issue. You don't believe there are too many guns out there, let alone whether people with some mental issues should be getting them. That's not the issue to you. Well, I believe no one with mental health issues should be having guns. Of course, it's ridiculous. We're also seeing tragedies with people driving into people, and you can make a bomb on the internet now. It's horrible. So we've got to focus on the person and doing everything we can to get these people help and get them off the streets. And again, parents have got to be vigilant. Kids have been great. And Neil, we've had so many reports since this because there are copycats, which are as big of a threat. But people have been flooding in. Night before last, I was on the phone with the police chief. The next morning, the FBI, because people were telling me, they were hearing me say, people think, well, it could be a hoax. I don't want to call something in that might not come to fruition.
No,
we
you're right
would
about
rather
that.
you call it in.
Do you think that someone,
false,
regardless of the mental issues involved here, we're led to believe that Nicholas Cruz bought this gun when he was 18. Should you raise the age at which anyone can buy a firearm, let's say to 21? Do you think that's something to discuss?
Well, you can go fight for our country when you're 18. Our military, 18 years old, you're in the military carrying guns. I don't think the age as much as the person, the individual themselves. We can look at him individually, but we have got to do something to crack down on mental health and mental health issues with people who own guns. That has got to stop. We've also, Neil, we have got to secure our schools because people could come in with a bomb, with something else. We have got to make our schools safer.
An armed guard who just was nowhere near the shooter when he came in. Do you think we should have more armed guards?
Neil, that high school was huge.
Oh, I know.
It's one of the biggest high schools I've seen. One of the biggest high schools I've seen. And as we know, that the defendant had been to the high school, so he knew how to get in and out of the high school. So I think we need more armed guards at our bigger schools. I firmly believe in that, in making our students safe while they are at school from many different things. Somebody could have a knife at a school. We have to have multiple sources to keep our kids safe at school.
So it's clear that she understands that we have to focus on the person and not the gun, because in this interview, she also defended the rights of 18 to 20-year-old adults. How about Pam Bondi reassures gun owners who are concerned about the loss of rights for 18 to 20-year-old adults that the Trump Department of Justice won't advocate for restricting their Second Amendment rights? And finally, the Department of Justice needs to promote concealed carry as...
So here's another issue that I have. So when I was in the Marine Corps, the drinking age was 17 on the base. And the philosophy is, if you're old enough to defend and fight for your country, you're old enough to have a beer. And so these people are nuts. So according to common law, all males 16 and over are automatically members of the armed irregular militia. There's two types of militia. There's regulars and irregulars. All freeborn Americans are irregulars. Strike that, irregulars. We are irregular militia. And we have a duty, not only a duty to be armed, but to be well regulated. And well regulated means well trained. It doesn't mean regulated by Nancy Pelosi and Justice Ginsburg. Well regulated means what it means. Well regulated, like the regulators, right? From the Billy the Kid, right? So why on earth would they want to make the legal age to own firearms 21? What significance does that have? If the voting age is 18, and of course we know the Marxist Democrats want to reduce it to 16, as they do the age of consent to be like, 12? But yet they don't think that a young man or woman should have the right to be able to be well regulated in the understanding and use of firearms. I have a problem with that. Give me a bunch of ones if you have a problem with that as well. Let's get back into the video. Very interesting.
As a solution, Pam Bondi has advocated for allowing armed and highly trained teachers to protect our children and classrooms.
So are you in Florida, are they open to what the president's proposed, and that is letting trained teachers, select teachers, carry a gun?
You know, I think it's the way that it's been presented, that every teacher's going to be handed a gun when they walk in the door. My whole family were teachers, and I wouldn't want them to carry a gun, nor would they.
Well, that says a lot.
Would have to be very highly trained teachers, former military.
Buzzword for Marxist leftists. I mean, have you ever met a public school teacher who actually supported the Constitution and the Bill of Rights? I'd like to hear about it.
Former police, we have plenty of them in our schools, and people who have just an expert shooting ability and skills. It takes a lot of skills. And, you know, we have air marshals on planes, and we have to protect our kids in our schools. So it's got to be the way it's done. It's not arming every teacher.
Now, this is a common sense solution that resonates with the president's base and can help save lives. It also synergizes well with the president's support for the nationwide Concealed Carry Reciprocity Act. This Department of Justice needs to recognize that self-defense and gun ownership is a solution, not a problem, and gun owners are public safety partners for law enforcement, not a subset of Americans to be policed. With this upcoming hearing scheduled for President Trump's Attorney General nominee, gun owners sure have a lot of questions to ask. We'll be watching and keep you posted on everything that happens. Now, thanks for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe.
Yeah, and make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel too. Make sure to double tap that screen. Make sure to like and subscribe. And when I say save, I mean save my videos for later, because a lot of my members are long haul truckers. I don't know, for whatever reason, truckers really love my show. So I typically try to bring you streams that are several hours long. Save them for later. That really helps me with the algorithm gods. Lets them know that you like my content. And also, you know, anybody, this is a donations driven type channel, but one of the best ways you can support me, besides liking and subscribing, is you can pick up a copy of my ebook about how I became a lawyer with no law degree or undergrad. You can go to my YouTube main page and just click open the description. For $19.99, you can get a digital version of this same book, digital, not the soft cover version, the digital version. And that's a really great way to support my channel and to support Team MPE. The other way to support my channel is to purchase memberships for other people who want to have access to the back end, where I get into more stuff. And once I get a high enough paid subscriber level, I'm going to start doing private showings just for paid members, where I go over the basics of law, general legal principles, teach you how to find a lawyer to study under if you don't want to go to a some commie run school where you're getting brainwashed by some professor who hates their country. And I'll teach you how to be a patriotic lawyer and someone who wants to support America in our common law value system that we have. Now, so as you probably can tell, I'm not a big supporter of Bondi. I think she's got a lot of good qualities, but I draw the line when it comes to like raising the age to own a firearm. I was out at the gun range like almost every morning when I had free time when I was 16 years old. You know, I had an AKMS clone, AR-15 H-bar, Colt, which of course the Democrats made all those illegal in California. Stupid, stupid, stupid. And that's why I was almost company high shooter when I was in the Corps. I missed it just by a little bit. And I'm really grateful that I had that firearms training. And then later on in life, I got even better training from Navy SEALs and buddies of mine, to where now I'm confident and comfortable enough to be able to train my kids how to field strip weapons, clean them, and also how for them to do CQB training. And I think it's absurd that they put this litmus test that you have to be a certain age to be able to exercise a fundamental God-granted right to keep and bear arms. I mean, for crying out loud, most of our founding fathers were just kids by today's standards. Think about that, guys. Think about how stupid this is, that they have a litmus test to decide who has the right to defend their family, hearth, and home and country. It's insane. We're all born with a God-granted, unalienable right to be able to defend our country and our families. So the next video we're going to do is we're going to get into the Senate hearing. This is the second Senate hearing, so you can learn a little bit more about Bondi. Because again, I'm not against everything about her. She's got a lot of good qualities, but I'm terrified that somebody like this is actually going to be in a position of authority to take away your right to keep and bear arms, or tell you you have to be a certain age, right? 21 to own a gun, but 18 to vote? Like, literally, people 18 years old have the right to vote for someone who's going to have their finger on the nuclear trigger, or decide how much of your paycheck they get to steal from you if they vote for a certain political party who's going to take your money and redistribute it. Think about that. So let's get into this next one. Here we go.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back for our second day of hearing on Ms. Bondi's nomination for Attorney General. As I said yesterday, I want everyone to be able to watch the hearing without obstruction. If people stand up and block the views of others behind them, or if they speak out of turn, it's not fair or considerate to others. So officers will remove individuals as they have previously. We didn't have any of these problems yesterday. I don't anticipate it today, but I just think we ought to make everything pretty clear. Before we begin with opening statements from the panel, I want to go through a couple of bookkeeping items and explain how we're going to proceed today. I will give an opening statement and introduce the majority witnesses, and I'll give the opportunity to Senator Durbin to provide an opening statement and introduce his witnesses. Then we will turn to our witnesses for their opening statements. Following their statements, we will begin with the first round of questions, in which each senator will have 5 minutes. Yesterday, we met from 9:30 until 3 p.m. so that every senator, both Democrat and Republican, could question Ms. Bondi. We heard from Senator Scott and Schmidt, who gave their strong endorsement of Ms. Bondi. Their introductions described her extensive experience, outstanding qualifications, and character. Yesterday's testimony showed that Ms. Bondi is certainly experienced and capable to serve as our nation's chief law enforcement officer at this very critical time. She is very well qualified for the position, serving 18 years as prosecutor and 8 years as Attorney General for the state of Florida. Florida, the third most populous state in our nation. She will enact desperately needed changes at a department that has been politicized and weaponized for partisan ends. With almost 30 years of experience behind her, she will restore both morale and law and order to the department, badly needed, in need of strong leadership. Her commitment to the rule of law emerged as a central theme of our discussions yesterday. And as I made clear in my opening statement yesterday, that is what I believe the department in this country desperately needs. Today, the purpose is to hear from an outside panel of witnesses, and we're grateful that all of you are here this morning to express your views on this nominee. I will go ahead and introduce the three majority witnesses before I turn over to Ranking Member Durbin. First is Dave Ehrenberg. Until just a few days ago, Mr. Ehrenberg was the elected Democrat state attorney for Florida's 15th Judicial District. He served in that role for 3 terms since he was elected in 2012. Mr. Ehrenberg also previously served in the Florida State Senate and as a White House fellow in both Clinton and Bush administrations at the Treasury Department. He has known Ms. Bondi since 2010 when he ran to be the Attorney General of Florida, a position Ms. Bondi obviously won. Notwithstanding their political differences, Ms. Bondi appointed Mr. Ehrenberg to be her drug czar to combat the opioid epidemic. And through that work, he came to know Ms. Bondi very well. Second, we have Mr. Nicholas Cox, who is Florida's longest serving statewide prosecutor. He has served in that role since 2011. In his capacity as statewide prosecutor, Mr. Cox focuses on cases involving human trafficking, drug abuse, fraud, organized crime, gang violence, cyber crimes, and crimes against seniors. Mr. Cox also previously served a member of the faculty of Stetson University College of Law, where he taught trial advocacy, consumer law, counseling and negotiations, and criminal procedure. Mr. Cox has extensively experienced observing Ms. Bondi's work as a lawyer and administrator. Ms. Bondi began her career as an intern in his office while serving as Attorney General. She pointed him to his current office. Third and last, we have Sheriff Emery Gainey, a career law enforcement officer with more than 40 years experience. Sheriff Gainey has served as a sheriff of 2 counties in Florida. When Ms. Bondi served as Attorney General, he served as her Director of Law Enforcement and Director of Victim Services. Through his work as law enforcement officer in Florida, Sheriff Gainey is very familiar with Mrs. Bondi's work with state, local, and federal law enforcement, as well as her work to address drug abuse, fight human trafficking, and victims of crime. Thanks all of you for serving. Senator Durbin.
Thanks, Chairman Grassley. I want to take a moment to reflect on yesterday's session with Ms. Bondi. There seemed to be a meeting of minds on criminal justice reform and the pressing need to protect our children online. Those are good things. There are still some outstanding issues from yesterday's hearing that I'm struggling with. Let's start with a very important issue. Who won the election in 2020? Why are we still asking that question? For goodness sakes, we moved on to a new election. You would think that'd be over. The reason why that's still a relevant question is it gets to the heart of our democracy. The peaceful transition from one president to a new president by the will of the people.
So just out of curiosity, can any of you tell me when America became a democracy? Because it's not mentioned in any of our founding documents. In fact, Ben Franklin said a democracy is when 2 wolves and a sheep show up for lunch and decide what's on the menu. And a republic is where 2 wolves and a well-armed sheep shows up to contest the vote. So I'm still trying to understand, when did America become a democracy? Because a democracy, according to our founding fathers, was the beginning of the end of freedom. So I'm trying to understand how we became a democracy. Can someone please explain that to me? I've always been curious why only Marxist college professors, CNN, and Democrats call us a democracy. I really want to know. I'm so curious. Please let me know, guys.
Resistance,
really
without
curious about it.
denial. Does the phrase hanging Chad have any significance to our witnesses? It does to me and to every American. In the year 2000, Bush versus Gore, there was a contest that went on into December and numerous court contests associated with it as to who actually won that election. There came a moment when Al Gore stood up and said, that's it, it's over. I've gone to court, I can keep going to court, but I don't think that's in the best interest of this country. I concede, George W. Bush won. You didn't hear Democrats at that saying, never say that in public, never concede that in public. We did. George W. Bush won the election because Al Gore decided to step out at a point when Bush was ahead, period. End of story. That is what a democracy is all about. One person concedes, the other person wins. We move to the next president and ultimately the next election. But that's not the case in the year 2020. We still have a candidate, in this case, President Trump, who's in denial as to what happened in 2020. And as a consequence, some characterize it a big lie, whatever you want to characterize it. It really is an important question because it gets to the fundamentals of anyone seeking a position in the cabinet of this president or serving our nation. Do they acknowledge the peaceful transition of power in 2020 from Donald Trump to Joe Biden? The answer is yes. The reason is we had the certification of the electoral vote. Senator Klobuchar remembers that well. And we went through the process we're supposed to go through in our Constitution. End of story. But yet when I asked that simple question of Ms. Bondi yesterday, she was unable to say just expressly yes. Joe Biden received more votes than Donald Trump and was elected president in 2020. Why is that such a hard question? I don't understand. Why couldn't she state it plainly that that's what happened? When a nominee for attorney general is afraid to state a simple fact, then what does it say about the future of our democracy and the credibility of our system of justice? She not only refused to acknowledge President Trump's defeat in 2020, she also said, quote, there was a peaceful transition of power. Let me repeat that, a peaceful transition of power. Seen the videotapes? What happened here on January 6th? Can you imagine if the news came on and said, did you hear what happened in London today? A mob stormed the Houses of Parliament, crashed through the door of the House of Commons, took control of British Parliament, and we hope that the police can take control back in a matter of hours so they can continue their business. What would we say to that? In London, in England, they went through what? A mob storming the Houses of Parliament, knocking down the door? Incredible. Whatever happened to that country? We thought they were leaders in the world. Now reflect for a moment on January 6, 2021, and what we went through. All of us went through individually, being spirited out of the Capitol building, taken to a safe place because of a mob. That was not a peaceful transition of power.
Oh, by the way, guys, we just received evidence a couple of weeks ago that Donald Trump actually had called in the National Guard and they were told not to come. And the only person who had the authority to prevent the National Guard from coming is Nancy Pelosi. So all this stuff's coming out. The January 6th committee destroyed all this exculpatory evidence. There's just a lot of stuff going on that's coming to light. And I mean, do you really believe anything that these guys are saying? I mean, they put Liz Cheney and this other dude, Kreuziger, who are basically rhino Republicans, the first time in history that the Republican side didn't get to choose who would be on the actual committee. The Democrats chose, and they chose two rhino Republicans. And they didn't call any character witnesses or allow any evidence that was exculpatory towards President Trump. And so I think that's another reason why the election was lost in such a landslide this time. Because I think most people who don't watch CNN or PMSNBC realize that it's rigged, that it's a fixed system. You've got the Communist News Network, you've got mainstream corporate media, Jeff Bezos, Washington Post, all these dudes who are hardcore lefties, and they're basically controlling the narrative. And that's why everybody split. And they went to Twitter, they went to even YouTube. You've got like 60% of YouTube is considered conservative, even with their censorship machine trying to shut us up, right? The libertarian point of view is still at least 60% of YouTube is people who don't want to watch CNN. And basically, which is just Democrat propaganda. Give me a bunch of ones if you agree that the mainstream media is Democrat propaganda. You have Fox News, which is like controlled opposition. I don't know of anybody who watches Fox News that watches my channel. In fact, I think most people come on my channel because they want to get real information that's not biased by the communist state. I don't give me a bunch of ones if you guys agree. But let's get back into listening to this guy because it's so hilarious. They come up with their own false narrative and expect you to buy into it. And if you don't, that makes you some kind of a crazy radical right winger, right?
And I want to just say, Sheriff Gainey, thank you for joining us today. You may have noticed, we all noticed around here, we're not supposed to notice, we should, the men and women in uniform who protect us in this chamber and throughout these buildings day in and day out. God bless them. But what they went through on January 6th is an outrage. Attacks on them, several lost their lives as a consequence of what they went through. Many were forced into retirement.
Oh, by the way, I don't know if you guys remember this false narrative that all these Capitol Police died. The only people who lost their lives were two females. One of them got the shit beat out of her by some Capitol Police in a tunnel, and the other one got shot in the neck by a scumbag Capitol Police officer, Byrd. I believe he was a lieutenant who got the Presidential Medal of Freedom, I think, from Biden, right? After he shot this woman, Ashley Babbitt, in the neck. And she was no threat to him at all. And he went ahead and shot her in the neck. And guys like this are saying that Capitol Police lost their lives. Well, a couple of Capitol Police we know died, months later or weeks later. I think one from a suicide, another one from a stroke. And this moron is trying to make you think, as well as CNN, that somehow or another their deaths are because of January 6th and what happened during the January 6th. I guess a couple of hundred people got upset after they were invited into the Capitol by Capitol Police and then later arrested. And now these same people have been held in cells that are about the size of your finger, right? Without the ability to even see their lawyers. And that's okay, right? That's okay. It sounds to me exactly like Fidel Castro. And so it makes sense that they want to hide and conceal and obfuscate and prevent you from knowing the truth. But that is the absolute truth. These people have been denied due process, and popular opinion has been used to make you think it's okay to deny people due process. The same way you were brainwashed into thinking it's okay to give people things that are experimental. My body, my choice only applies to some things, but not others, apparently, right? And they actually got people to buy into that. So hopefully we'll see some changes there. I don't know. What do you guys think? I'd like to know what your opinion is.
And hundreds of people were arrested for trespassing and much more serious crimes. Donald Trump characterizes them as political prisoners. The people who attacked our policemen are characterized as political prisoners, and he promises that he's going to give a pardon to all of them on the day that he's sworn into office. I asked a basic question of Ms. Bondi as the chief law enforcement officer, which she would be under as Attorney General. What do you think about the pardons? She wouldn't comment. Well, she made it clear she stood behind the police, but you can make them clear by saying to Donald Trump, this is a bad idea. Anyone who is guilty of violence, certainly guilty of violence, should not be pardoned on the day that you're sworn in as president. So I was at least disappointed by her answer. And then this Kash Patel issue. Kash Patel, I'm going to meet him next week for the first time. I've read an awful lot about him. There's an awful lot to read. He has a lot to say, and he said it, and he's published it in book form. One of the things he said is that he has an enemies list. Secret police agencies throughout history have an enemy list. The American FBI does not and should not. I think there's serious questions about this man, his judgment, and his political values that he would bring to office. Yesterday, Ms. Bondi embraced him as a person's right for the job. I certainly don't feel that way. He's going to have to convince me. So there are questions raised. Having said that, I want to concede two things. First, if I were setting out to hire an attorney, she certainly has the strongest resume and should be hired. Number two, the testimony today, particularly from people of the opposite political party in Florida, is a testimony to the fact that she's been bipartisan and very effective as Attorney General. I will concede that point. When she talks about the things she achieved, I'm impressed. I should be. But the question is, when Donald Trump knocks on her door as Attorney General, and he will, if you question that, ask Jeff Sessions or ask Bill Barr, he will knock on her door and ask her to do something that's going to be a challenge ethically or morally. It's just his nature. He views that office as an office he personally controls. He doesn't. The American people and the Constitution control that office, and we have to resolve whether or not Ms. Bondi is a person to be the next Attorney General. Our first minority witness is Lisa Gilbert, co-president of Public Citizen, a nonprofit organization with more than 500,000 members. The organization has extensive record of investigating conflicts of interest in public corruption, and Ms. Gilbert will speak to the dangers of confirming someone with corporate interest as Attorney General. Second witness, Mary McCord, Executive Director of the Institute for Constitutional Advocacy and Protection. She's a visiting professor at the prestigious Georgetown Law Center. Prior to these roles, Ms. McCord served for nearly 20 years as Assistant U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, also served as Assistant Attorney General for National Security from 2016 to 2017, and Principal Deputy Assistant Attorney General from 2014 to 2016. Mr. Chairman, at this point, I'll turn back to you.
Thank you. You know, we have this tradition of swearing people in regardless of how honest you are and everything like that. So please rise. Would you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give before this committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God. I've seen all of you say yes to that. Thank you very much. And now you may proceed with your statements, and we'll start with Mr. Ehrenberg and just go across the table that way. So please start out.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Durbin, Senators. In 2010, after serving 8 years as a state senator in Florida, I ran for Florida Attorney General. I faced a fellow state senator in the Democratic primary and one of 3 Republican candidates in a potential general election. Pam Bondi was one of those 3 candidates. This was her first run for political office, and she was the only candidate in the race on either side whom I did not know. At our first candidates forum, she came up to me with a big smile and told me her younger brother, who may be here today, Brad, worked with me at my old law firm as a summer associate and had very complimentary things to say. That was vintage Pam Bondi. My potential future opponent immediately disarmed me by ignoring partisanship to reach out to me as a human being. Pam won her primary, and I lost mine. I then endorsed my Democratic primary, who faced her in the general election, and then Pam won that election too. Despite the fact that I was on the other side of the aisle and did not support her campaign, Pam called me to offer the position as her drug czar to combat the opioid epidemic that was ravaging Florida and to shut down the state's ubiquitous pill mills that fed the nation's addiction. She offered me this position, because she knew from the campaign that fighting the opioid epidemic had been my career priority and an important part of my campaign platform. It did not matter that I had a D after my name. She believed I was the best person for the job, regardless of party affiliation.
Well, I would argue that it shows that she is a rhino Republican and definitely not a conservative libertarian. Give me a bunch of ones if you agree. I mean, these are people who want to restrict your ability to keep and bear arms. And we know that Biden, when there was federal emergencies, had his FEMA agents and federal agents go door to door to take people's firearms away. Precisely when you would need to have your firearms, he had, under a state of emergency, having people in Florida and New Orleans going door to door to strip you of your firearms that you would use to defend your family just exactly when you needed them. And this guy is from that same political party. So that's terrifying to me. I don't know about you guys. Give me a bunch of ones if you think that it's okay for the government to go door to door and take your firearms during an emergency. Give me a bunch of 2s if you think it's tyrannical, and people like that should be tarred and feathered and barred from ever holding political office in this country. I'd like to know what your opinions are. Let's go.
I accepted the position and received a little pushback from my side of the aisle, but nothing compared to what Pam Bondi received. At a party event, one county Republican chairman was so angry that he wagged a finger in front of her face,
to condemn her decision. He didn't argue that I was unqualified, just that she was resurrecting a Democrat's political career who had just lost badly in a statewide election. On that, he may have had a point. I served as drug czar, though, for 2 years and then got elected as a Democratic state attorney for the next 3 terms, 12 years until last week. But you don't wag a finger in Pam Bondi's face and get away with it. Pam's kind and genuine and loves people, but she's also tough as nails. Pam met this guy's fire with fire, putting her own finger in the party leader's face to defend her new employee, and she didn't care that I was a Democrat or that she didn't know me that well at the time, or that one day this could help me run for office, which it did. She didn't do it because she one day hoped I would have her back at a Senate confirmation hearing. It was just the person she was and still is. When AG Bondi and I began our anti-pill mill initiative, 7 people a day were dying from prescription opioid overdoses, and there were more pain clinics in Florida than McDonald's in Florida. A year later, she convinced a reluctant Republican legislature to pass crucial, long overdue reforms, including a prescription drug monitoring program that dramatically reduced doctor shopping. AG Bondi used her bully pulpit and her bipartisan relationships to get it done. Today, Florida's pill mills are no more. The steady stream of cars from Appalachia that constituted the OxyContin Express are a distant memory, and countless lives have been saved because of our state's days as the drug dealer for the rest of the country is an ignominious part of our past. Pam Bondi and I have always had our political differences, although that has never come between our friendship. I supported the presidential campaigns of Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, and Kamala Harris. I've been outspoken on cable TV and streaming channels on a host of legal issues, including with Professor McCord, including the dangers of targeting one's political enemies. I was critical of the Durham investigation, which led to questionable criminal cases and embarrassing acquittals. A prosecutor's job is to follow the evidence and the law without fear or favor. Pam Bondi is a 20-year prosecutor who understands this. Even if she does something as Attorney General of the United States that I disagree with, I believe she will always remain tethered to the law. And there are some important issues where she and I are in complete agreement, such as the need to stop the flow of deadly fentanyl that has become by far the largest killer within the ongoing opioid epidemic. We agree on tough punishments for those who engage in the modern-day slavery known as human trafficking, and for laws that allow victims to have their low-level crimes expunged and to utilize the T-visa program when needed. We agree on the need for treatment courts, which have proven to be a better alternative to incarceration with a lower recidivism rate for many nonviolent drug offenders. And we agree there should be a stronger response to the growing number of anti-Semitic incidents in our country, and especially on college campuses. Senators, I'm grateful for the time to speak with you today and look forward to answering any questions you may have.
Chair Grassley, Ranking Member Durbin, thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'm Lisa Gilbert, co-president of Public Citizen. Public Citizen is a 54-year-old nonprofit organization with 500,000 members and supporters across the country. We champion the public interest in the halls of power, working to ensure that our government and our economy work for the people, not for wealthy special interests and corporations. On behalf of our members, we stand in opposition to the nomination of Pam Bondi for the role of Attorney General. The mission of the Department of Justice is to work on behalf of the American people, keep our country safe, protect civil rights, uphold the rule of law. Unfortunately, Pam Bondi has numerous troubling potential conflicts of interest from her time as a lobbyist, which call into question her ability to hold corporate wrongdoers accountable. I'll focus my testimony on our concerns about this problem. Public Citizen recently examined the federal lobbying disclosures and Foreign Agents Registration Act reports filed by Bondi and Ballard Partners, her lobbying firm. Our review showed that her client list is full of controversial clients, some of which stand to benefit directly from having their former lobbyist in charge of the DOJ. Over the last 5 years, she represented 30 clients, from large corporations and contractors to a foreign government. In addition, during her earlier time as Florida Attorney General, A recent New York Times review found several pieces of evidence that seem to demonstrate her general tendency to assist corporate allies and corporate lobbyists' strong belief that Bondi was exceptionally accessible to lobbyists and amenable to the agendas of their corporate clients. Bondi had a large number of domestic clients, but today I'll highlight just two. Geo Group, the nation's largest private prisons company, and Amazon, an e-commerce giant. Bondi was registered to lobby the first Trump White House in 2019 for Geo Group. Both DOJ and DHS inspectors general have been critical of prison management of Geo Group, and they stand to profit substantially if the Trump administration's new immigration detention and deportation policies result in filling empty or underutilized beds in their facilities. As a real precedent for this concern, Public Citizen did research back in 2019, which showed Geo Group's contract dollars rose by over 40% in the first 2 years of the Trump term. Now to Amazon. They're, of course, a very well-known tech company. Bondi was registered to lobby for them in 2020. In recent years, they've been investigated by the DOJ over injury rates and workplace safety at their warehouses, been referred to the DOJ by a bipartisan group of lawmakers for potential criminal obstruction, and had their robo-taxi unit federally investigated over safety concerns. In addition, DOJ and the FTC recently reached a settlement with Amazon regarding children's privacy violations via Alexa. And of course, Amazon also receives multi-billion-dollar contracts from multiple federal agencies, ranging from DoD to NASA. Beyond these examples of potential domestic entanglements, Bondi was registered as a foreign agent, lobbying on behalf of foreign governments and officials. To highlight just two, Bondi worked for both the Embassy of Qatar and a Kuwaiti investment firm. For Qatar, the goal was the improvement of their often criticized human rights record before the 2022 World Cup. For the Kuwaiti investment firm, the work was an attempt to free a Russian money manager arrested in Kuwait on terms of embezzlement from her and her staff to the tune of tens of millions of government funds. So to conclude, we believe a person with this deep record of controversial business and foreign government lobbying should not be considered for Attorney General. A well-functioning DOJ needs to be tough on corporate crime and work to improve the lives of our communities. This level of corporate entanglement just speaks to exactly the wrong incentives. During the first Trump term, corporate enforcement plummeted at the DOJ, and we really fear a repeat of this pattern. Public Citizen, to that end, recently created a tracker of ongoing federal investigations that are at risk of being dropped or weakened or modified. The tracker includes 237 investigations, which has cases against 192 distinct companies. Shockingly, nearly 1/3 of those companies have known ties to the incoming Trump administration. And as highlighted throughout my testimony, Pam Bondi is no exception. To be clear, we do not think that this level of corporate alignment can be addressed simply by recusals. Bondi's broad representation of and lobby registration for corporate interests is much more than a list of potential conflicts. It instead represents an overall sense of prioritization. It's a net of potential conflicts that there really isn't a realistic escape from. If her nomination as Attorney General proceeds, we are really concerned that she will take actions that reflect the needs of these types of entities. So with that, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to present the views of Public Citizen and welcome any questions.
Good morning, Chairman Grassley, Ranking Member Durbin, and members of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Thank you for allowing me to testify before you today on behalf of the United States Attorney General nominee, Pamela J. Bondi. My name is Emery Gainey. I am a 40-year career law enforcement officer who has served at all levels of law enforcement, to include the sheriff of 2 Florida counties. It has been my distinct pleasure and honor of knowing and working with Ms. Bondi since 2010. As a member of her senior executive staff, I served as the Director of Law Enforcement, Victim Services, and Criminal Justice Programs when she assumed the office of Attorney General in 2011. And I continued to serve in those capacities through her 8-year tenure as Attorney General. To this day, we maintain a very close professional, personal, and family relationship. I want to speak this morning on Ms. Bondi's commitment to the just and proper enforcement of the law, demonstrated through her well-earned relationships with local, state, and federal law enforcement partners throughout the United States.
During her service as a prosecutor in Florida's 13th Judicial Circuit, Ms. Bondi had well-established, deep-rooted relationships with local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies. Upon becoming Attorney General, she immediately began the process of meeting all law enforcement leaders throughout the state of Florida to establish partnerships to ensure that our citizens and visitors to our state receive the most effective law enforcement and victim services available. One critical issue that she immediately took on was the emerging proliferation of deadly designer drugs, specifically those referred to as bath salts, that our state had been facing prior to her being elected as Attorney General. Ms. Bondi called together our stakeholders to include prosecutors, law enforcement, our Office of Drug Control, our state lab directors, and many others, to not only seek to understand this new trend in our state, but to seek immediate solutions to stop the spread of these deadly substances that were taking the lives of our citizens. From these stakeholder meetings, she developed a strategy and a call to action to immediately outlaw these dangerous bath salt substances. Utilized in Florida's rule-making statutes and bipartisan support from Florida's legislature, she was able to permanently ban the sale of these deadly drugs, despite the continuous efforts by those who altered their formulas in order to circumvent Florida law in an attempt to keep multiple versions of these harmful substances on some of the shelves of some of our retailers. These actions, in conjunction with our public and private partners, begin to effectively address a growing trend in illegal substance abuse in our state. Ms. Bondi's commitment to the rule of law was also evident in her taking the lead role investigating and prosecuting crimes involving gang activities, organized retail theft, human trafficking, and a host of other criminal activities. She demonstrated her deep commitment to keep and restore the lives of victims of human trafficking through her leadership on Florida's statewide Council on Human Trafficking by investing in and supporting safe houses for victims. She also partnered with multiple private businesses to help combat human trafficking in both the sex and label industries by establishing a zero-tolerance toolkit to train their staff in identifying and reporting suspected cases of human trafficking. I want to now focus on her compassionate side of her tenure, where she was and remains a staunch supporter of crime victims and crime victim rights. One of her roles as Florida's Attorney General was the delivery of crime victim services. The Florida Attorney General's offices was the recipient of and administered the third largest annual award of federal crime victim compensation funds, in addition to the state of Florida crime victim funds. Ms. Bondi dedicated a team of experienced victim advocates and crime compensation professionals to work with our local governmental and non-governmental agencies to ensure crime victims receive all the benefits allowable in the state and federal laws. Her personal compassion was constantly on full display when meeting with crime victims and their families. I stood beside her at crime scenes when she visited victims in hospital rooms, at family relocation centers, at conferences for victims of crimes, and many times one-on-one in her offices. She demonstrated her commitment to fairness and justice by not only rigorously seeking to hold perpetrators of crime responsible for their acts of violence, but she also demonstrated the same level of passion, care, and empathy for those innocent citizens who found themselves, through no fault of their own, a victim of some of the most horrific crimes committed by individuals against fellow human beings. Mr. Chairman, the United States of America and the American people will be well served by confirming Pamela J. Bondi as our next United States Attorney General. Thank you.
Distinguished members of the committee, thank you for inviting me to testify about the importance of the independence of the Attorney General and the Department of Justice when making investigative and prosecutorial decisions. Before my current position at Georgetown Law, I served for nearly 20 years as a federal prosecutor under Republican and Democratic administrations, and 3 years at Maine Justice, first as Principal Deputy Assistant Attorney General, and later the Acting Assistant Attorney General for National Security. I stayed through the transition into the Trump administration before leaving in May of 2017. I do not know Pam Bondi. I am here today to speak because of my long career at the department, my reverence for the department and its mission and its independence. The lawyers and law enforcement officials at the Department of Justice are critical to preventing the weaponization of the department and preserving impartial adherence to the rule of law. For the Attorney General, this means taking seriously their oath of office, which is to the Constitution, not the President. It means recusal if their impartiality regarding any particular investigation or case could reasonably be questioned. And it means reaffirming long-standing policies limiting contacts between the department and the White House on specific investigations and cases. The oath to the Constitution means that if there is inconsistency between what the President may ask the Attorney General to do and what the Constitution requires, the Attorney General must choose the latter. Although she is a member of the President's cabinet and therefore expected to implement the President's policy priorities, her duties are limited by the Constitution. That means, among many other things, not targeting people or associations for investigation or prosecution based on protected speech or association, not executing searches without a warrant, not denying the equal protection of the law to all people within the United States. It also means that any prior role as part of the President's legal defense team is over once the oath of office is taken. The Attorney General is not the President's personal attorney. She is the attorney for the United States. When President Ronald Reagan nominated William French Smith, his former personal attorney, to be the Attorney General, Smith was asked during his confirmation hearing how he proposed to ensure that his former relationship would not compromise his independence. Smith responded, "I would have to be very conscious of situations where it could appear that because of that relationship, a problem might be created." Smith recognized that legitimate concerns might require his recusal in certain cases to avoid the appearance of impropriety. As relevant to Ms. Bondi, her work defending President Trump during the first impeachment proceedings and public statements she has made about potential prosecutions of those involved in cases against President Trump could create, at the very least, the appearance of a lack of independence if she were to open investigations into people involved in those matters. Similarly, any involvement in any civil case against the DOJ, a civil case against the DOJ, about which President Trump's attorneys have given notice and which seeks more than $100 million for alleged rights violations rising out of the Mar-a-Lago search, could reasonably raise concerns about Ms. Bondi's impartiality that could only be addressed through recusal. In 1978, 4 years after President Nixon's resignation after Watergate, Attorney General Griffin Bell established the first of what has become known as the department's White House contacts policy. It has been reaffirmed by attorneys general under both Republican and Democratic presidents ever since. The DOJ policy recognizes the tension between protecting the department's independence in making decisions about criminal and civil law enforcement while also preserving the president's ability to perform his constitutional obligations to take care that the law be faithfully executed. The policy thus bars the department from advising the White House about pending or contemplated enforcement actions subject to limited exceptions while permitting communications about the advancement of the administration's policies. Just as in Bell's time, in order to insulate those who initiate and supervise law enforcement investigations, such as line prosecutors and their supervisors, communications with the White House about specific cases must involve only the Attorney General or Deputy Attorney General at the department and the counsel or Deputy Counsel to the President or Vice President at the White House. A parallel White House policy memorialized by counsels to the president over multiple administrations and directed to all White House staff contains similar restrictions on contacts with all departments and agencies. The incoming Attorney General would be well advised to continue to adhere to the White House contacts policy and to urge the White House counsel to do the same. In closing, public respect for the Department of Justice begins with public respect for the Attorney General. That respect comes from the impartial adherence to the rule of law, free from improper political influence. The Senate should ensure that the next Attorney General is committed to taking the steps to earn that respect.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you very much for allowing me to be here today. For a man from a small town in Florida whose father was a trucker and mom was a mail carrier.
By the way, guys, just so you know, so I'm attorney Michael Eline. Good seeing you guys. I know I haven't been butting in a lot. I'm working today on a couple of briefs that I'm behind on, but it's the only time I'm going to have to go live today because I promised the wife and kids I'd take them out for lunch and get my son a new phone. So I appreciate you guys joining me. Again, this is a donations driven channel. So, even if it's $1, any kind of donations are appreciated. If you want to pick up a copy of my ebook about how to become a lawyer with no law degree or undergrad, you can get a digital version of this ebook by going to my YouTube channel. And on the description tab, you can go to my PayPal link. It's $20, $19.99. And I'll explain to you how you can become a lawyer the traditional way before we had the government-run schools and government curriculum destroying the minds of human beings. Just like John Jay and all of our founding fathers, when they were lawyers, they went to an Inns of Court system, and you would study law under a lawyer or a judge and become a lawyer that way, or reading from Blackstone's commentaries on English law, learning about Thomas Aquinas, learning about knowing the law and meaning to keep it well, as opposed to a government-approved curriculum, right? So that's kind of where I go. And then I talk about the law office study program in California. I talk about different states that offer law office study. And then obviously some of you guys know that I ended up getting a JD after I was already a practicing lawyer. And I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt, law school is a complete waste of time, in my opinion. The only reason I did it is because I knew that, especially where I was in LA, other lawyers would look down on me if I didn't have a JD. So I'm one of the very unique people in this world, at least in America, who got a JD after I was already a barred practicing attorney, making more money than most lawyers of 15 to 20 years in practice, by the way, because of my background in construction, being a blue collar guy, and learning just how to deal with normal people, right? That's one of the problems that academics have, is they think they're smarter and better than everyone else. And me being a construction worker and being a Marine before that, construction worker, Marine, construction worker again, and having owned several health clubs and managed several health clubs, and being a owner of a limousine company, and Rodney Dangerfield, hey, I get no respect, being his driver, I had opportunities to learn about normal people. And so supporting my channel means a lot to me because I do work so much. Most of the people in my audience are people like me. You'll notice that I don't really have a lot of lawyer friends. I'm a normal guy. Most lawyers don't like me because I'm not part of their club. And that's why I get along more with guys like Reluctant Prophet or a Chili DeCastro or a Life Under the Microscope, people who are not brainwashed by the government-run school academic industrial complex. And that's why a lot of people really like me, and they like it when I represent them. So thank you for supporting my channel. Again, even if it's $1, man, if I see a super chat or I see someone who wants to buy a block of memberships for new people, that's going to help me build my paid subscriber base. And once I have that, I'll start doing private shows for you guys on the back end. But yeah, for those of you who want to become lawyers and don't want to waste your time going to a Marxist-run academic institution, this is the channel for you to watch. Now, if you're somebody who thinks that you're a libertarian while at the same time wants to live off the government, this is probably not the channel for you. But I really do appreciate everybody supporting the channel. And Two Old Crows, thanks for coming by. And if I see enough of you guys like Two Old Crows, and I see guys like KRAR and where the pavement ends, and I see you guys on my channel regularly, I'll make sure to give you guys your wrench. And as you can see, I have a pretty broad audience. I have moderators who are pro-illegal alien. I also have patriotic moderators who love their country more than illegals. And but yeah, if I see, the idea behind making you a moderator is so you guys know you've been vetted and that you're okay with me, and for the other moderators not to time you out. So once you've been on for a while, you'll earn that opportunity. I'm a merit-based dude. Now, SLO asked, by any chance, I think I actually had you represent me. Yeah, Slow. I mean, maybe I may have represented you. I don't know, brother. But I primarily do catastrophic injury claims. So, and most of my clients are military veterans. So I also am involved in the Paul E. Line Memorial Ride. Many of you may not know my father died from Agent Orange from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma as a result of the Vietnam War and being exposed to toxic chemicals there and at Camp Lejeune when he was on leave coming back home. And so I work with biker clubs like the Leathernecks Motorcycle Club, the Marine Riders. And so when those guys get in bad motorcycle accidents, I'm their go-to lawyer because they know that I'm a Marine and that, you know, I take their calls. I don't pawn them off to my staff. And I don't take on a lot of cases, but the cases that I do take on, I give it 1,000,000% to make sure that you get the same attention that I would have wanted, that I wanted before I was a lawyer, and I had to have these academic types represent me. Never again. So there's a lot of reasons why people become lawyers. For me, it was because I was tired of being treated like dog crap by these lawyers who think that they're better than everyone else. And I always remembered that, and I still remember that to this day when I represent my clients, to make sure I treat them with the dignity and respect that they deserve, because after all, I'm their servant, not the other way around. Give me a bunch of ones if you agree that lawyers need to be more respectful and need to know a little bit more about normal people before they go out and start representing people. Remember, we're nobody without you. Without clients, we're nobody. And most of my clients are regular average Joes, just like I was before I got my law license. And I still consider myself to be one of you. I'm a man of the people and a man for the people. And that's what makes me different. And again, my views don't necessarily reflect the views of my law firm or the other attorneys at my firm, because I have a merit-based philosophy, and I've got guys who are, more academic types that are just really good at litigating. And if somebody, I saw a comment, I'd like to know what you think Marxism is. Well, there's a great way you can find out. You can go, if you want to learn about Marxism, you can go read the Communist Manifesto. And there's another really good YouTube channel. Oh gosh, I'll remember his name in a minute, but this English guy who exposed the fact that Adolf Hitler was a member of the Communist Party, and he actually ran as a communist in Bavaria, and he supported the Communist Party, but he didn't like Marxists because he thought that Marxists were Jews, and he wanted a German form of communism. But I'll remember the name in a little while. But for all you people who want me to define what Marxism is, it sounds like you've spent too much time on a leftist-run college system, and you're running interference for your party, which is the Democrat Marxist Party, trying to convince other people that the Democrats aren't Marxist. Look, I'm a recovering Democrat. I used to be a Democrat when Democrats pledged allegiance to the flag, and they didn't burn American flags, and they supported things like the Second Amendment. But that's all changed now. So anyways, let's get back into the video, and hopefully you guys are having a good time.
This is speaking before the United States Senate. This is a true blue honor. So thank you for allowing me to be here. I know Pam Bondi. I've known her for about 35 years, and I've known her as a prosecutor. I've been her colleague. I've been her supervisor. She's been my supervisor, and I know her as the statewide prosecutor of Florida. And I hope to share with you a little bit today about what I know about Ms. Bondi professionally, and what I know about her as a prosecutor, and what I do know about her as how she will handle the job of United States Attorney General, if you also decide. When it comes to criminal prosecution, Pam Bondi is unquestionably an ace. She did everything from batteries, DUIs, first-degree capital murder cases. She has experienced almost everything within the American justice system, from going to the scenes of these tragedies, to the courtrooms, to the witness rooms, holding hands with the victims of these crimes. Pam really has done it all. She appreciates the rules that make our criminal justice system the best in the world. And I wholeheartedly believe she will apply them and she will follow them. Ms. Bondi is a tenacious but a very thoughtful prosecutor. Crimes of violence upset her the most. She and I tried dozens of cases together before juries, including first-degree murders. Her level of preparation was simply outstanding. Her ability to connect with and speak to them on an understandable level was excellent. Juries loved her. Defense counsel respected her, and courts listened to her. It was clear that Miss Bondi was there because she believed what she was doing. She believed in the case she was presenting. And she really did have that undefinable something that made everybody in the courtroom, juries, judges, maybe even defense lawyers sometimes, want her to succeed. She was excellent and still is. Miss Bondi is tough. She quickly earned the title of career criminal prosecutor at a very young age due to her very clear feelings about repeat offenders and also her outstanding abilities in the courtroom. Her task was clear: prosecute the habitual offenders seeking out the highest sentence possible. And she did just that. She wouldn't budge in plea bargaining with these repeat offenders that had proven time and time again they weren't going to comply with our laws. And she always held them responsible for their offenses. Due to her tough on crime approach, she found herself in court trying cases before judges and juries routinely. And she loved to be in the courtroom. She loves being in trial. You know, the impact that prosecutors have on lives of people was never lost on Miss Bondi. I sometimes find myself telling our prosecutors at the Office of Statewide Prosecution, please remember what we're doing here. Our jobs are great. We are so fortunate to have these jobs. But the amount of power that we wield and how this power will impact people is remarkable. Just the issuance of a simple subpoena can ruin a life, and that's an everyday thing for us. Pam Bondi understands that. She realizes it. As you've heard, she's done it for 18 years in the courtroom, and also the 8 more as the Attorney General. When she became the Attorney General, she didn't forget her experiences as a prosecutor. One of the things that she brought for me as Florida statewide prosecutor, which I'm very fortunate now to have continue under our current Attorney General in Florida, Ashley Moody. One of the things she did is she really shielded me from the politics. She understood how politics can impact what we do every day in a courtroom. And I will forever be grateful to both of them for shielding me from those politics. With all due respect, prosecutors, we don't usually want to be politicians. We just want to go in and do what we're supposed to do. And Pam Bondi made the job not only capable for me to complete, and I feel complete well, but she made it fun. She made it something I really enjoy doing. And I will be forever grateful to her and General Moody for allowing us to do that. I said a lot more in my statement, and I'll let my statement stand. I know it's in the record and you all will hear it, and I've got about 12 seconds left. But I do want to say that on the question of independence, I've experienced times with Pam Bondi where I've said to her, it's a different role than what you all are talking about, but where I've said to Pam Bondi, General, no, we can't do that. She might disagree with me. She may let me know she disagrees with me. But in the end, she'd look at me and say, do what you've got to do. And that happened several times, a lot. She understands that. And I think she will be an excellent Attorney General. Chairman, if I might say to my colleagues at the Department of Justice, the prosecutors, as Mr. Ehrenberg said publicly, they have nothing to fear from Pam Bondi as a prosecutor. And to the contrary, I truly believe they will love working for her. Pam Bondi understands the rule of law. She understands the impact on lives. She understands what we do. And I believe wholeheartedly that all of them will love working for Pam Bondi like I have. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much.
I thank all of you for being very careful about not going over the 5 minutes. Thank you all very much for that. I'm going to start with you, Mr. Ehrenberg, and my staff gives me information that maybe you don't mind telling people that you vote for Democrats and that you voted against President Trump. I'm just saying that you probably don't mind us saying that, or you wouldn't have told us. You clearly have political differences with Miss Bondi.
Oh, holy crap. I'm so sorry, guys. Trucking Anthony says, I'm glad people like you exist. Knowledge is real power. Thank you, Trucking Anthony. Hold on a minute. Guys, give me a bunch of ones for Trucking Anthony. Here's another example of I have for whatever reason, guys, long haul truckers love my channel. And I can only imagine it's because they're probably like former like military vets and stuff. and they're into freedom. And so discipline equals freedom. That's all I can tell you, Trucking Anthony. And so Trucking Anthony just threw me $4.99, and he got me another one here. So Trucking Anthony says, I have a lot of terrible attorneys. I wish they had to have a real life experience and work in the real world. And I agree. Okay, so let me tell you how this worked for me. All right, so I can build a house from the ground up. I still have calluses on my hands from when I was like 19 years old. I mean, they just never went away. And my father, he started out as a ditch digger, digging forms for Denny's restaurants when he got out of Vietnam for $2 an hour. And he ended up saving enough money to pay cash for a house off of Cambridge in Orange, California. And so that was my example. Of course, he was crazy because of the war, and my parents got divorced when I was about 2. And so I was torn between both of them, and they were just kids when they had me. So long story short is I begged and begged my mom to let me move in with my dad. And I moved in with my dad, I don't know, when I was like, 9 or something. And I would go to the job site with him in the morning, and then he would drop me off at school because he'd get up at like freaking 3 a.m. I go to the job site. He'd have me sweep out the homes. Anyways, let's go back. So he started out as a ditch digger for CBR Development Company. And he ended up becoming the general manager for CBR Development, building all the Winchell's Donuts and all the Denny's restaurants in the United States. In fact, pretty much every Denny's restaurant you go to that was built prior to 1980, my dad built that restaurant. He was in charge of the supervision and construction. And so I would fly around in 747s to go and visit my dad before that period. And that's when the airline stewardesses would escort kids. So I would stay in the top area, and they'd basically babysit me, and I'd go and visit my dad. And then later, my dad was one of the very first guys to have a 930 turbo. So I would drive with him to different states from California in the Black Beauty. And that's when they had the big trucker thing. This is segues into Trucking Anthony. Breaker 19, this is Black Beauty. Or I was Rubber Ducky and my dad was Black Beauty. I always called myself Rubber Ducky, right? Because they had some cool trucker music about Rubber Ducky. Hopefully you guys old enough can remember that. So anyways, Trucking Anthony, I want to just get into this real quick. So my background was every summer I'd work with a different trade. So I work with the plumbers, I work with the form diggers and the form pourers, the concrete guys, the electricians. I did rough, I did finish frame. So I can build a house right now with my bare hands by myself from the ground up. And that experience of working with regular common people, like when I talk to a guy like you, I know what you're going through as a trucker. I even know like how you flash the lights to thank people, little things that you just don't know if you spent all your time in the administrative, educational, industrial complex, right? So all that experience, and then being a Marine and getting injured, all that stuff. And then I got my contractor's license. So I was a contractor and dealing with the red tape. I had to become a paralegal just to deal with clients because they're obviously more sophisticated, right? Your customers who own homes, who want you to do custom work for them or whatever, they're more sophisticated than you when you're just a young kid, right? Blue collar guy. So I had to learn all that stuff. But as a result, then I got beat up by a cop in West Covina because I asked him for a copy of his photo ID over a parking ticket while I was loading my truck up at a Bally's Total Fitness. I was the corporate wellness director for the Bally's Total Fitness in West Covina, and Officer Millison pulls me out of my car and beats me up in front of all these witnesses. And my Marine brothers were at that jailhouse within probably 20 minutes. They were at my health club getting sworn witness statements. It's before they had these cameras, right? These camera phones. They didn't have any of that. And my Marine brothers were there, and they were helping me out with their family members, him and his wife. And so that's my experience. And that's what motivated. I ended up winning. The guy charged me with resisting arrest. I ended up winning that case, getting those charges thrown out, and suing that piece of garbage cop and getting like almost $30,000 for my troubles. And that was when $30,000 was worth like $100,000. And then ultimately, I became a lawyer on the law study program. And so you're right, Trucking Anthony. That experience that I have of being a regular guy is why I have recovered over $300 million from my clients, and why I'm not an egomaniac, because I recognize that this is a gift from God, that I have the ability to help common people like you, guys like Reluctant Prophet, guys like Mr. Gold, guys like Chili DeCastro, people who have really, really been abused by the system and don't have the same advantages of somebody who's moneyed or somebody who is connected. And so I know what you're going through. And so it means a lot when people like you support my channel, Trucking Anthony. And I also recognize that $19 to you is like $100 to somebody who's got a lot of money. So I know that means a lot. That's a lot. That what you just did is major. And so everybody give me a bunch of ones for Trucking Anthony, and make sure to like and subscribe to Trucking Anthony's channel. And Trucking Anthony, I want to know more about your story too. So please keep coming back. But understand, like right now, I've been working on a report just now, so I haven't been able to cut in too much. So I just want you guys all to know that I am here, but I'm working today because I am a lawyer, and I'm not ignoring you guys. And so I apologize, Anthony, that it took so long for me to respond. But Trucking Anthony throw me some really cool super chats. That means a lot to me. By the way, guys, super chats go to the front of the line. That's what keeps my wife happy. Hey, what's BZ Watchdog? What's going on, BZ? That's right. Punishment is the grueling process of the system. That's right, guys. By the way, BZ Watchdog is also a Marine Corps brother of mine. If you need any self-defense equipment, go check out his channel. He sells self-defense equipment. He has got a really cool channel where he does government accountability operations and police audits. And he's a good guy, and I recommend that you support him in any way, shape, or form that you can. So, guys, I'm going to go ahead and get the video rolling again. Thank you, Mark Soto. That means a lot to me as well. Being appreciated is a big deal because it's not easy what I do, and I get a lot of flack. You can see the Marxist Democrats coming on my channel, always trying to cause trouble. You don't know what Marxism is. Trust me, guys, I know what Marxism is. That's why I'm not a Democrat anymore. But let's get back into the videos, and let's have some fun with the hearings. Here we go.
And I'm sure you disagree with her on many issues. So what would you say to critics of Ms. Bondi who believe that she is, quote unquote, too partisan to serve as our nation's Attorney General?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Those critics should talk to her political opponents in the past, like me, like Dan Gelber, who was the Democrat who beat me, who ran against her in the general election. They're friends. It's rare these days that you see people who battle it out in a general election remain friends after all these years. She had relationships across the aisle within the Florida legislature. I know because I was in the Florida legislature before I ran for Attorney General, and I saw it up close. I think some of the criticism comes in that she is loyal to President Trump, and she is. But I never believed that if asked to do something illegal, that she would knowingly do that. She would never step across the line. In my mind, I can't imagine her doing that. I echo what Nick Cox said, is that she's always been tethered to the law. She understands, as a 20-year prosecutor, that prosecutors have to follow the evidence and the law. And because of her background as someone who is not a super partisan, she had never run for office before running for Attorney General. She doesn't come from the world of politics. She comes from the world of prosecutors and in the criminal justice system, that I do believe that she will act in a way that is always tethered to the law and will not cross that line to making purely political decisions.
You worked with her on drug issues very much. Seeing how Ms. Bondi handled the opioid crisis in Florida, how do you think she will handle the crisis on a national level?
I think she's going to get tough on fentanyl across the border. I don't know the specifics on how she plans to tighten up on it, but I know she's going to make it a priority, because when we had an opioid epidemic in Florida and we were the drug supplier for the rest of the country, she went to a reluctant Republican-dominated legislature and told them we needed to pass this prescription drug monitoring program, something that had been stalled for a decade in Tallahassee, and she got it done. I had run on that platform. If I had been elected Attorney General as a Democrat, I don't think I could have persuaded that legislature to do it, but she had the credibility. It took Nixon to go to China. It took her to convince a recalcitrant Republican legislature to pass these needed reforms. So I don't know specifically what she will do, but I know that she will not shy away from standing up to people in her own party who will disagree with her on it.
Mr. Cox, you've worked with Ms. Bondi for 3 decades, and you're also a longest-serving statewide prosecutor. Some have suggested that Ms. Bondi's lobbying and political career will influence her decision-making. In your decades of working with her, have you ever known her to make a decision that was illegal or unethical?
Absolutely not. Ms. Bondi, as Mr. Ehrenberg referred to, and quite honestly, Ms. McCord could tell you as well, being a prosecutor is about focusing on the law and focusing on the evidence and focusing on really what's right. That's what our job is, to do justice. I know that she's embraced that. She's practiced that. I have never seen anything untoward in any of the cases I ever worked with Ms. Bondi.
And Sheriff Gainey, you served as Ms. Bondi's Director of Law Enforcement and Victim Services. You spoke in your opening statement about Ms. Bondi's work at federal, state, and local, with state and federal and local law enforcement. What would you say is Ms. Bondi's biggest achievement as Florida's Attorney General from the perspective of you as a law enforcement officer?
Senator, her willingness to partner with law enforcement is not uncommon for her to call together sheriffs and police chiefs, state law enforcement, and federal, to seek from those leaders and directors what the issues are. Florida is a large state. Those issues are vast, and they change from one state to the other. She sits down with those partners, discusses those issues, and then fiercely do everything in her power to ensure that the men and women in our state and our federal offices in our state have the resources and the tools to do their job. Was not uncommon. We had, during legislative session, Sheriff's Association met in her office. The Florida Prosecutors Association met in her office. She provided space so you can be there to consult with her and her team and her staff on a regular basis as we address issues before our legislatures every single year.
Senator Urban.
Sheriff Kennedy, let me follow up with you on that subject. You're aware of what happened here January 6th in the Capitol complex and the law enforcement personnel who were attacked by the mob, the demonstrators, and a number of them, hundreds of them, have been prosecuted, and some are serving sentences for violent felonies against our police. Was there anything like that in your background dealing with Ms. Bondi, where she's been called on to make a decision on standing up for law enforcement in similar circumstances?
Senator, every single day, quite frankly. She had worked with, we unfortunately experienced law enforcement officers killed in the state of Florida. She was there not only to work with those law enforcement agencies and those families, the respected prosecutors, whether it was our statewide or our local prosecutors or our federal prosecutors. She was a fierce supporter to make sure that the laws of the state of Florida was enforced, that men and women of law enforcement were supported, and their families knew that she supported them on a regular basis.
Mr. Cox, you talked about several instances, experiences you had with Ms. Bondi when she was under political pressure. Could you tell us a little bit more about one of those?
Quite candidly, there was some pressure at the beginning when Mr. Ehrenberg mentioned about I apologize.
You want to pull that microphone close to you?
That is the first time anyone's asked me to pull a microphone closer.
I may change my mind. Go ahead.
You wouldn't be the first. Many judges have. Ranking Member Durbin, yes, right from the beginning when Mr. Ehrenberg mentioned about the problems we had with the opioid epidemic and the pill mills, she was actually, I will say this, was getting some pushback from our governor, Senator Rick Scott. And it was about the PDMP. And I was there when she sat down with Senator Scott. I believe Sheriff Gainey was there with us as well. And we had a couple sheriffs, and we were speaking with Ms. Bondi about it. She called the governor, now senator, I apologize, right then, and put him on the phone with us and had us discuss with him the need for the PDMP, the Prescription Drug Monitoring Database, and which ended up making a massive change. And to the senator's credit, he sat down and listened to us, asked us questions, and in the end, she convinced him we needed it. And as I recall, it was within the next week or two that he came up here and he announced his support for our PDMP. You know, she didn't have an agreement with a person who she loves. I mean, she very much got along very well with then Governor Scott. And she confronted him about it and changed his mind.
Now, here's a track record.
Yes, sir.
This newly elected president, as former president, fired 2 attorneys general under circumstances where they disagreed with him. Senator Sessions in one instance and Bill Barr in another, and they were both fired. So it's pretty clear that he is not adverse to taking a different position than his attorney general and having a pretty short temper when it comes to dealing with it. That's the reality of what we see on the record, not once, but twice. Can you understand our concern about?
So I just looked over and saw a comment. So local things, this is a pro natural rights and natural law channel. And I'm very highly critical of Pam Bondi because of her stance on the Second Amendment. So if you're a Democrat, you probably will support Pam Bondi because her positions are very far left, anti-Second Amendment positions. And we know that the Democrat Party, I think one of their primary missions is to abolish or severely restrict the Second Amendment to make it impossible for us to enjoy our Second Amendment rights, but definitely not a pro-Trump channel by any stretch of the imagination. I recommend that you read the writings of John Locke, Thomas Aquinas, if you want to learn a little bit about the underpinnings of what Team MPE is all about. But let's get back into the show because I am working. I am a lawyer, and I'm just trying to get caught up on some files right now. But hopefully you're having a good time and enjoying the channel. You'll probably notice that about probably half my audience hates Trump. The other half loves him. And that's what it's all about, guys. I want you guys to be able to be free thinkers and be critical thinkers and agree on the main things that matter, which is all of our rights come from an all-powerful creator, just like it says in the unanimous declaration between the states. Okay? Our rights come from a creator, and because of that, they can't be taken away or abrogated by the state. And that's what Team MPE believes, and that's what we're all about. All right? So let's get back into the show.
About whether she would react positively if he put that pressure on her?
I can understand your concern, yes, sir. But the Pam Bondi I know as a prosecutor, where her heart is as a prosecutor, and having my experience with her, myself telling her no when she was the attorney general, I believe she will stand up to it. I truly believe that. She understands what our duty is. She understands, I think, the boundaries of the ethics that she mentioned several times yesterday. She understands all of that. And she's a true prosecutor. Yes, sir, I believe she will do it.
Thank you. Ms. Gilbert, on this question of conflicts of interest and recusal, Ms. McCord, I invite you to answer this as well in the short time left. You seem to suggest that she can't recuse herself out of her current situation. Her background as a lobbyist and attorney representing private interests, that she might be able to find some response to it, but it can't overcome what you called systemic or whatever the characterization you used. Haven't we had attorneys general in the past with backgrounds in the private sector facing similar circumstances?
We have had lobbyists become attorney general in the past, but nowhere near the scope and scale of Ms. Bondi, with 30 clients of her own in just the last 5 years and coming from a firm that represents such a broad swath of corporate America. It would be very hard for her to remove herself from every situation that touches on these corporate interests. One easy example, I mentioned Geo Group. There's not a pending enforcement action or investigation into them. There is one into their top rival, the other biggest private prison company, Core Civic. She would not be expected to recuse herself from that. However, ramifications from it could impact Geo Group. And so it's just one small example of how interconnected corporate America is and how hard it will be for her to remove herself from all these situations.
I think my time is up. You next time.
Yeah, I'll be acting on behalf of the chair, and I am next in the order. Mr. Ehrenberg, you ran in a primary, got defeated by a Democrat, endorsed that Democrat in the general election against Pam Bondi, and Pam Bondi hired you? Thank you.
Correct, Senator.
Thank you. And actually, I can tell that you've still got a liberal leaning, because in the same sentence that you complimented Pam Bondi.
Hey, Brett. Hey, everybody give me a bunch of ones for Brett Ray. I just saw you there, bro. I've been working over here. Brett Ray is one of the biggest supporters of my channel, and he makes sure that he does, that he gets me new paid subscribers. And that's what we're all about. We want to bring people into the fold so we can teach them about natural law and natural rights, and that our rights don't come from the government. They come from a creator, and that John Locke and Thomas Aquinas and these guys were the people that our founding fathers looked up to. And so if you look at the Declaration of Independence, the Articles of Confederation, it'll give you a better understanding of what this channel is all about, okay? So I'm not here to take political sides. I'm very disappointed with Pam Bondi. I think she's a horrible choice based upon her Second Amendment stance. And I'm going to definitely be having a very serious conversation with Dick Heller about this, because I'm going to meet him at the SHOT Show in a couple of days. And this is very, very disappointing. I mean, come on. She wants to restrict the age to own a firearm to 21. Are you kidding me? Under common law, all males 16 and over are automatically members of the irregular militia. So we've got a lot of problems here we need to talk about, Dick. As much as I know a lot of people support Trump, his selection for Pam Bondi tells me that he's still a typical Northeastern Democrat, which is what he always was. Let's get back into the show.
You took a shot at the Republican-led legislature by calling them recalcitrant. So, I mean, folks, you need to pay attention to that. This is somebody who's been a foe, who probably spoke against her in a public setting, and she had the temperament and the good judgment to look past your political views and hire you into her organization. I think that says a lot about people. In fact, I've made friends with the guy that ran against me, and nobody on the Democrat side seems to like him anymore. Ms. Gilbert, this lobbying thing is and I don't mean this in the time allowed. Can you talk about specific things that she lobbied for versus the firm that was retained? I don't know if Cutter hit the bingo card today. It may have for you. But then when Ms. Bondi explained that this was $115,000 a month for a firm that was handling human trafficking cases, is that bad? So I'm assuming not. So let's go to the next one. What specifically did she or the firm do for these yesterday? She focused it with Senator Booker on the abysmal state of the Bureau of Prisons. So she's clearly going to drill down on that. What in your due diligence, what specific acts did she, not her firm, did she engage in that makes you feel like her sincerity towards Senator Booker yesterday was not genuine?
I can't speak to her specific sincerity or motivations, but I can
speak specifically to what she lobbied for that you expressed as a concern for the Bureau of Prisons or for the private prisons, specifically what she lobbied for.
Absolutely. So from what we know about her engagements with Geo Group, as mentioned in my testimony, they've been condemned for not having a lot of.
I get it. There are problems with them, but I guess I'm trying to get to what specific issues do you think she carries into this office that would undermine her credibility in trying to do a better job with the Bureau of Prisons? I'm just trying to get to the fact. I'm not an attorney. I don't even play one here, but I'm just trying to figure out what specific acts did she do other than around here, it'll be on the bingo card for Kash Patel, because we know where that's headed. But what specifically for any of the high tech, any of them, what specifically did she advocate for other than the by reference concern that we may have? That's all I want to know from your organization. What specifically have you found about Pam Bondi in a filing, in an argument, in a letter that she specifically said that you believe would undermine her credibility?
Yeah, and I think from our perspective, it is about the appearance of impropriety.
Okay, just appearances. So you don't have a specific example.
It's about the engagement with this entity. And
okay, so I get it. But in the same way that we know the facts about Qatar now, because we ask about it, it'll be interesting to see what specific role that she played. Thank you. I appreciate you being here. Ms. McCord, you worked in the Obama administration. Were you a career or political?
The entirety of my time at the Department of Justice, I was in a career position.
You were in career position? Okay, thank you. Mr. Gainey, it sounds like I did the same thing, or I have done the same thing that I think Pam Bondi has done, just call somebody out of the blue and say, we got to take it a different direction. Isn't it also, I mean, she got a lot of blowback from the Republican legislature for some of the work that she was doing to the point that Mr. Amberg made. Is that true?
That is true, Senator. In fact, it's the call that Mr. Cox referenced. It was on a Saturday morning. Be more
so
specific.
I bet if we went back at the time, like I sometimes get attacked, I bet if we went back at the times, we'd probably find several examples where people were taking shots at her from her side of the aisle for doing something that's proven to be very important. So she strikes me as somebody that was her power. That was her influence back in her time as prosecutor. And she stood up to him and did the right thing and didn't really care whether or not she got reelected. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you all. On behalf of the chair, Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you very much. Thank you also to Senator Durbin, and thank you to the witnesses before us today. I am going to start with you, Ms. McCord. Welcome back to the committee. If we could just go through these answers, because I think it's really important to put this outside of personal friendships, all these things, whether or not the Attorney General is a Democrat, Republican, who's in charge. And you testified that the Attorney General is not the president's personal attorney. In fact, the person is the attorney for the United States, the AG is. And you referenced Attorney General William French Smith's comments at his nomination hearing. Can you talk about the importance of maintaining this distinction that the AG is the attorney for the U.S. and not for the president?
So it's important not only to have the confidence of the career prosecutors and law enforcement officials, department, but also to the country, because the loyalty does need to be to the United States and to the Constitution. And there may be times, and I think Senator Durbin pointed out times in the previous Trump administration where the Attorney General did not show sufficient loyalty to Donald Trump, and those attorneys lost their positions.
Okay, thank you. And in your written testimony, you described the Justice Department's White House contacts policy that was established following the Watergate scandal. It's been reaffirmed by AGs under both Republican and Democratic presidents ever since. The policy states that all communications about particular cases from the White House or Congress must be referred to the AG or other high-level officials in the Justice Department in order to preserve the integrity and independence of DOJ investigations from political interference. Yesterday, I asked Ms. Bondi if she agreed with former Attorney General McCasey, Republican Attorney General, that any attempt, that was his words, any attempt by the White House, his words, to interfere with a case is not to be countenanced, and any call to align assistance or to a United States attorney from a political person relating to a case is to be cut and curtailed. She affirmed that she agreed with that statement. You also testified to a parallel White House policy, Ms. McCord. Can you speak to the importance of both the Justice Department and the White House maintaining and abiding by strict contacts policies?
Well, historically, like I said, post-Watergate, these policies have been instituted under Republican and Democratic administrations. In fact, Don McGahn, the White House counsel in the first Trump administration, reissued that White House context policy in January of the first term because he recognized the importance that it not just be a DOJ policy, that all within the White House staff know not to pressure the department or other departments and agencies when it comes to specific matters.
And how can Congress exercise its oversight authorities to ensure that the policies on both sides are being followed?
I think starting with the questions you asked yesterday, Senator Klobuchar, is a good start. And if there should come any time where it seems like these policies are not being complied with, or if there is a refusal to adopt or continue those policies, those are something that Congress should be very concerned about.
Okay. Ms. Gilbert, you've been before us many times on the subject of antitrust. And as you know, and I know, and many Democrats and Republicans on this committee know, monopolies will go very far to preserve their power. Tech-funded groups, for instance, spent hundreds of millions of dollars against Senator Grassley in my bill, which was, of course, not just supported by consumer groups, but also by groups as conservative as the NFIB, the Small Business Association, because of the unfairness of monopoly tech companies putting their own products at the top of their search engines and the unfair competition that results when they have that kind of power. You know, there are cases out there right now that are really important on monopolies: Google, Apple, Live Nation, Ticketmaster, RealPage, that are being litigated to their fullest. Why is it important that the new AG continue these cases to protect consumers, enhance competition, and just the general question about the rules of the road and how important this is as Senator Grassley and I reintroduce our bill?
Absolutely. Thank you for that question and for your and Senator Grassley's great work in this space. We are hopeful that the new Department of Justice will continue the cases that have been begun over the last 4 years. We've been really excited to see the strong forward momentum for dealing with corporate concentration, taking on monopolies head on. It's so important for consumers. Public Citizen is a consumer organization, and as we think about regular people and engaging with the markets, if they are squeezed out, if they can't sell their products, if there isn't fair competition, if small businesses can't get ahead, these are all problems for regular Americans. And so just really hopeful that the DOJ will continue what they've started, that these cases roll on, and then also want to put a plug in for your fantastic bill, yours and Senator Grassley's. We hope as the DOJ continues, so can the work here in the Senate on this important policy to stop self-preferencing, as you mentioned.
All right. Well, thank you. And I wanted to thank also others on the panel for their important work when it comes to pill mills and what it was and is going on with these horrible situations where people are getting hooked while people are profiting off of it. Thank you.
On behalf of the chair, Senator Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've heard a lot about the newfound concern that my Democrat colleagues have about independence in the AG's office. Given over the last 4 years, it is ironic. Ms. McCord, I do want to ask you, you're talking about the importance of independence. Is it concerning to you that Eric Holder, while he was Attorney General, described himself as Obama's heat shield and his wingman? Is that concerning to you?
That's probably not the best description of the job of the Attorney General, but I think the record probably speaks for itself and speaks differently.
Okay. Loretta Lynch met with Bill Clinton just days before the FBI interviewed Hillary Clinton on the investigation as it relates to emails. Does that meeting with the spouse and former president of the subject of the investigation, is that concerning to you as it relates to the appearance of independence?
My understanding of that is a chance encounter at an airport on the tarmac, and that does not actually give me concern.
Okay. I don't think that's what happened, but that's an interesting characterization of that. But I think, and I'm going to switch to you now, Mr. Cox, because these are sort of related. I think the frustration a lot of Americans feel and why the decline in trust and faith in the Department of Justice is they saw exactly what happened over the last 4 years, which was a very obvious attempt to try to jail a political opponent. And I'm not going to ask you to comment on that.
Thank you.
Yes. I'm not going to ask you to comment on that, but I think that's why you see a lot of the questions that are asked by my Republican colleagues on this committee. It's just this lawfare. We don't want to see it continue. But what we've seen over the last 4 years is a total disgrace. And I think for the hardworking men and women in the Department of Justice who aren't engaged in this, it's affected the department's reputation, and why I'm such a big believer in Pam Bondi and what she can do and try to restore credibility to an agency that has been weaponized and politicized, and get it back to its core function, which is objectively administering justice and taking on violent crime. And I just want to ask you, in your experience with Pam Bondi, this has been what she's done. She's a career prosecutor, right? I mean, you can see her embracing this role of working with, whether it's the U.S. attorneys or other law enforcement around the country, of taking on violent crime, because we need leadership there. We've got a lot of, crime has gone up. And, I'm from a state that has, St. Louis and Kansas City, and we had partnerships when I was Attorney General with the U.S. Attorney's Office to take on violent crime. And when Joe Biden came into office, those were severed for political reasons, which is wrong. It's not a partisan issue. Do you see that as a role that she will play as Attorney General?
Absolutely. But what you just described about the relations with law enforcement is what not only she practiced, she encouraged all of us around her to do. And I could not agree more with you about your assessment of Ms. Bondi on that. Look, we're prosecutors. I mean, at her heart, Pam's a prosecutor. And our job is to go in and fight crime. But, we don't take lightly, those of us that are career prosecutors, that our job is to do justice. I mean, that's what the courts have said. And at her heart, 100%, that's Pam Bondi. It really is. So, yes, and Pam loves law enforcement. I mean, let's not kid each other. We all love law enforcement and everybody and everything they stand for. And so, yes, sir, I believe she would do that with law enforcement and prosecutors. She did it in Florida.
And we'll talk offline about your role. It's an interesting role because in Missouri, the local prosecutors are the ones there's no office of statewide prosecutors. So I'm not going to ask you about that. I just find that
not common.
It's not a common thing. But in your experience in serving with Pam Bondi, did you find her committed to enforcing the law equally and impartially?
Oh, yes, sir, I did. I mean, that's what we're supposed to do. And she embraced it. Yes, sir, she did. She is a complete prosecutor. She is a total prosecutor. And that's why when I speak to her independence, it's because she believes in it and it's in her heart. I mean, seeing her recently, I know that's where she is. I really truly meant it when I said to my colleagues at the U.S. Department of Justice, if confirmed, you're going to love working with Pam Bondi.
I couldn't agree with you more, which is why I was thrilled to be able to give that introduction yesterday of Pam. I think she's going to be an outstanding Attorney General. And I think like I said yesterday, I think she deserves a bipartisan vote, not only in this committee, but on the Senate floor. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, sir.
Senator Welch, you're next.
Thank you very much. And I think all the witnesses, I read your statements and watched, and I want to thank the Florida folks for being here on behalf of somebody that you know well and worked with a long time. She clearly is a competent person and has quite a resume. So you've reaffirmed that. A couple of questions that I have are less about her and her qualifications and more about this question that looms out there, where there's a mutual concern here about not using the justice system for political reasons. And there's a point of view with my Republican colleagues that it's been used that way in the prosecutions against Donald Trump. I don't agree with that, but I hear them on that. And there's a concern on my part, and I think a lot of our others, that Donald Trump has made very explicit statements that he intends to pursue political adversaries, and he's named them, including my colleague, Mr. Schiff, Liz Cheney. And he is now a president who enjoys the benefit of he will be a president who enjoys the benefit of the immunity decision by the Supreme Court. I strongly disagree with that decision. I don't think anybody is above the law. That's the whole basis upon which our country was founded. But I take him seriously when he says he wants a prosecutor to go after the after his political adversaries. And the tradition in the Justice Department since Watergate has been to really create a near firewall between the administration, the executive, and the Justice Department because of its special role. And all of you are law enforcement, so you just know how awesome that power is that you have, and you have to have restraint as well as aggression. So how does a attorney general handle a president who has already put an immense amount of pressure on Bill Barr, one of his attorney general, who did it on Mr. Sessions? And shouldn't we take seriously the president's threat, President Trump's threat, that he's going to go after his political adversaries? And how do we deal with that? And how do we assess that in terms of this decision? I'll ask you, Ms. McCord, to start.
Thank you, Senator. As we know that in the first Trump administration, Attorney General Sessions made the decision to recuse himself from the Russia investigation because of his work with Donald Trump during the campaign and because of meetings he had with the Russian ambassador during the campaign. He recognized that appearance of impropriety and the need for independence. He also appointed a special counsel to take over that investigation. Those are the kind of steps that are required when there could be pressure, and there was pressure put on Attorney General Sessions. Indeed, I think forever after that recusal decision, he fell out of favor with the president and ultimately was fired. But those are the things that an independent attorney general needs to take seriously and needs to do to demonstrate that commitment to independence from political influence.
And what's difficult here is that none of us know whoever is in that job and is confronted by a very determined President Trump to do something that from the prosecution point of view may not be appropriate. A political prosecution of an adversary for payback. There's no way to know how any of us, as committed as we are, would be able to withstand that pressure. But I'll talk to you, sir. You work with Pam Bondi, Pam Bondi, and have a high opinion of her. I'll give you the opportunity to say how she would be able to withstand what I think is inevitably going to be an enormous amount of pressure by the president at a certain point when he decides, directed towards whoever serves as his attorney general.
Let me start out by saying I've been fortunate enough not to be in that situation because I've had attorneys general that I work for, like Pam Bondi and Ashley Moody. However, a prosecutor's job is a solemn thing. The impact we have on lives is, you mentioned the power, and you're absolutely right. It's got to be respected. It's got to be appreciated. It's got to be embraced. And sometimes that means that I've been in positions before where I've thought, if I do or say this, I could lose my job. But you've got to be willing to do that. I don't know how else to say it. It's tough. It's very tough. My job, fortunately, is really not a political job because of my AGs.
Right.
But you do have to be in the position sometimes when right is right to have to stand up and buck up.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I yield back.
Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to each of the witnesses who are here today. Mr. Cox, let me start with you.
Yes, sir.
You worked with Attorney General Bondi for over 35 years.
Yes, sir.
Can you speak to her leadership style and how she managed the Attorney General's office?
Fair, of course, very kind, but firm. She was very decisive. That's what I liked about her. But in her decision, Ms. Bondi always listened. There were times she and I disagreed, several times, many times, where we would disagree and she would hear me out. Sometimes I'd change her mind, believe it or not. So it wasn't often, but it happened. But sometimes, she would listen to me and go the way she felt. That was her job. She was the Attorney General. But she is very firm. She's very decisive. And I will tell you the number of times I walked with her, she appreciates my role and our role as prosecutors. The number of times I would walk away from her and she wouldn't agree with my decision, maybe on a particular case. And she would tell me, do what you got to do. I mentioned it earlier in my statement. That's the Pam Bondi that I worked with. That's why I'm so confident in her that she can fill this role.
So I think the single most important responsibility that General Bondi will have at the Department of Justice is restoring integrity to the department. I think over the last 4 years, we have seen a pattern of politicization and weaponization of the Department of Justice that has done massive damage to that institution, a storied institution that is incredibly important for the rule of law. Speak to your assessment of General Bondi's integrity and her ability to restore integrity to DOJ.
Might I just answer that first off by saying she's a prosecutor, and that's what we're supposed to do. I've spoke to it several times, and I won't repeat myself, Senator. At her heart, she believes in the system. She believes in what we do. I don't think it gets more, with all due respect to everybody in this room and that may be listening, I don't know how much more serious it gets on impacting lives than being a prosecutor and being a judge who has to handle these cases. And she's always respected that. You know, I mentioned in my statement, she's never forgotten, she's never lost her humanity, and she hasn't. You know, might I say, I don't know if this is answering your question, Pam Bondi likes people, and she wants people to like her. And I don't know that that's so bad for an attorney general either, but she appreciates the impact of this job. I hope I've answered your question, Senator.
All right, Mr. Ehrenberg, let's turn to you. So you and I have known each other 30 years. We were classmates in law school. It's good to see you. Welcome, welcome to the swamp. You live in Palm Beach, which is a lot nicer weather than it is up here. And you spent 3 terms as the elected state attorney in Palm Beach County. You're a Democrat. You ran as a Democrat, were elected as a Democrat. And you also, in this last election, voted for Kamala Harris. Is that right?
Correct.
You've also worked closely with General Bondi.
Correct.
In your judgment, describe, same question I asked Mr. Cox, how would you describe her leadership style and how would you describe her integrity?
Well, Senator Cruz, in full disclosure, we weren't just classmates, you and I. We lived in the same dorm first year before either of us had any gray hair.
And burn those pictures.
Fair enough. Mr. Cox is right. She has a very hands-on style. Everyone in the office knows her. She was not isolated from the rest of us. She walked the hallways. She was friends with everyone. She brought her dog to work sometimes, even though it probably violated code. And it was a big dog, the St. Bernard. And she was just she's a very likable
Didn't have
person.
a barrel of whiskey under her neck, did it?
Only in Bugs Bunny cartoons. She's a very likable person. And I think you'll find that from everyone who knows her in Tallahassee and throughout Florida. It's hard not to like. You can disagree with her politically, and she and I have our political differences. But as far as a boss, she never tried to big time anyone. She's a person like everyone else. She expects the best from people, but she has a real human touch about her.
Now, you also worked with her very closely, in particular, in going after pill mills. Can you describe what you and she were able to accomplish together on that?
We were able to shut down the pill mills. Florida was the pill supplier for the rest of the country. 98 of the top 100 doctors who dispense pills were in Florida. It was a national embarrassment. The OxyContin Express from Appalachia down to Florida. People would come down, buy their drugs, use, abuse, and then go home and sell them for a profit. We ended that. She appointed me to be the lead person, but we could not have done it without her. She was the person who got the legislature to change the laws. We couldn't have done any of that without that. She was the one who convinced them to pass the prescription drug monitoring program. That was indispensable. So it was her leadership that really led to a dramatic decrease in the number of deaths from opioid overdoses.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for testifying today. Professor McCord, I'd like to ask you about January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. Can you succinctly define domestic terrorism?
Domestic terrorism under the United States Code is a crime, an act of violence that is a crime under federal or state law that is done with the attempt to influence a policy of government through intimidation or coercion.
Based on that definition, were some of the acts committed on January 6th acts of domestic terrorism?
Certainly the acts of violence that violate the criminal code do seem to have appeared for many of the people based on their own statements. Many of the defendants in cases that are being prosecuted, they seem to have been done to influence the policy of the government, and specifically to not certify the electoral college ballots on January 6th.
Yesterday, Ms. Bondi refused to disavow President Trump calling the insurrectionists hostages and patriots. What effect would President Trump's pardoning of these criminals have on our country? What is the message if that were to happen?
Senator, I believe it would have an enormous impact on the criminal legal system, and I would say also on our judiciary. In fact, I published a piece about that this morning in The Atlantic. We have our federal judges here appointed by Republicans, Democrats, and President Trump himself, who uniformly have condemned the crimes of those who have been convicted due to their attack on the U.S. Capitol. That anything close to a blanket pardon, which is what has been suggested but not promised by Donald Trump, without individual consideration of cases, would severely undermine these federal judges and undermine the criminal legal system.
We know, and this has come up with one of my colleagues, we know from the disastrous Supreme Court immunity decision that President Trump pretty much has a free pass to do what he wants. An unfettered president is even more dangerous if the Department of Justice is not independent. So based on your extensive experience at the DOJ, are there warning signs that we should watch for to signal that the DOJ has lost its independence?
Senator, I think as we've seen sometimes in the past, that when there are concerns among the career prosecutors and law enforcement officials at the department who have responsibility over investigations and cases, when they have felt pressured, many of them have actually resigned. We saw that during the first Trump administration with respect to some of the prosecutions involving Michael Flynn and Roger Stone.
So I take it that people resigning is one indication that all is not well, that independence is maybe not what's in practice. I'm just wondering, if we were to ask the Attorney General if the president ordered you or suggested or hinted that you go after his perceived political enemies, would the Attorney General be able to cite attorney-client privilege and not respond to us?
I don't want to give a legal opinion on that, Senator. I do think that that is the type of pressure that we are looking to an attorney general to stand up to from the White House. And I certainly want to take Ms. Bondi at her word when she, under oath yesterday, said she would exercise independence.
Well, the thing is, what's deeply concerning about Ms. Bondi is that she is very loyal to President-elect Trump, and he demands 100% loyalty of all of his people. So yesterday, Ms. Bondi could not say that President Biden had won the election in 2020. That is a basic fact. And I think that it was her loyalty to President-elect Trump that basically made it hard for her, impossible for her to say that President Biden had won the election. So that is concerning. Based on what we heard yesterday, I'm very concerned that if confirmed, Attorney General Bondi will say yes if and when President Trump asks her to do something illegal. And the thing is that not much of what President-elect Trump will do is going to be deemed illegal because of the Supreme Court's disastrous immunity decision. So I'm really struggling with how are we to know that all is not well in terms of the independence of the DOJ. One thing would be if they adopt a policy, or if the president adopts a policy that he will not order the DOJ around, even if this incoming president has said the Justice Department is basically his law firm. So if you have any further suggestions aside from people actually resigning to indicate that the kind of independence we are looking for is not being followed, I would welcome that.
Yes, and Senator
you,
Ruano,
Mr.
your
Chairman.
time is up. Thank
Please
you.
respond.
Thank you. Let's see. Mr. Cox, I'd like to start with you. I heard your comments with regards to both Pam Bondi, who we are here for today, and you heap praise on Attorney General Moody, who you work for as well. I'd like to say a public congratulations to her being named Senate designee and be the next senator from Florida. Oh, look, I get to deliver the news to you. So DeSantis just came out and said she will be joining us. I am thrilled. I mean, as a mom of school-age kids, to have another woman sitting right here next to me, fighting for the people that we serve, with what I understand is her brilliant intellect, her ability and her passion for the people of Florida, which I know she will bring to the United States Senate. I cannot wait to call her a colleague. So on behalf of me and all of us, welcome to Attorney General Moody's new Senate designee. We look forward to her taking the ranks.
Might I respond or comment for just
Sure,
briefly?
absolutely.
Senators, you're going to love Ashley Moody. She is a wonderful person to work with. She's brilliant. That is wow.
Well,
Thank
right?
you for telling me.
I'm so excited I got to tell you.
Best thing about it is I can say I learned that in the United States
In the
Senate.
United States Senate, that's right. And hopefully she will be up here just in the next few days after we confirm Senator Rubio, who's going to do an exceptional job as Secretary of State. So congratulations to Ashley, and cannot wait to serve with her.
Thank you.
So now let's talk about another amazing woman, Pam Bondi. I have heard you over and over again when you respond to questions talking about her. I think you said she is fair, kind, and firm. You have talked about the fact that she is transparent and impartial. I would like for you one more time to say to the American people, based on your previous work with Pam Bondi, can you explain how she'll continue to operate, you believe, in that manner, in a fair and transparent manner as she takes the helm of the Justice Department?
But because she believes in everything you just questioned me about, and she practiced it in Florida. You know, whether you agreed with her or not, Pam Bondi, like I said, is a person who really likes people. I think we should welcome that into government. I think that sometimes we lose sight of prosecutors. I'm going to speak to myself. We can lose sight of the fact of the ranking member mentioned, the immense power that we have, and we get caught up in it. Pam Bondi doesn't get caught up in those kinds of trappings.
I love it.
Yeah, she loves people, and she at her heart, again, is a prosecutor. As Mr. Ehrenberg had mentioned, nobody has anything to fear from Pam Bondi. She is going to be a breath of fresh air if y'all send her there.
Absolutely. And I think we need to restore those very things, fairness and transparency to the department. And I look forward to her taking the helm. She's going to do that for the American people. And it's an exciting new day. So thank you so very much.
And thank you for the news.
Absolutely. We are thrilled. So Mr. Ehrenberg, I learned obviously that we need to talk with you offline about getting those the stories on cruise, right? And also that she has a Saint Bernard. I have a Newfoundland. So who knew that we both had love for the large dogs? And Sheriff Gainey, I know that you've had an opportunity to work with Pam Bondi as well. I want to talk to you specifically, both of you, about the opioid epidemic, about what we've seen with drug trafficking. I mentioned it yesterday. We heard Pam lean into this as well, but there is nowhere in my state that I travel where someone does not tell me a story about losing a loved one to opioid abuse, addiction, overdose. And so tell me from your experience and how she works with state and local law enforcement officers, state and local leaders. I'm a big believer that local leaders know best. And you have people that come to DC that somehow get here and believe that we've become experts on every issue. And the truth is, you have to talk to the boots on the ground to learn what to do, how to do it, and to affect real change. And so can you both speak to her relationships with state and local law enforcement and workforce, and how you believe she'll carry that to the Department of Justice, please?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Senator Britt. And thank you for the news about Attorney General Moody. I hope Nick Cox still has a job when he goes home. When I was Attorney General Bondi's drug czar, we were visited by Gil Kurlikowski, who was President Obama's drug czar nationally. And it was a very productive meeting. I still have the pictures from that meeting. Not once was there ever a discussion that, well, he's from the feds, we shouldn't trust him. He's a Democrat, we shouldn't trust him. None of that. We were just trying to get the job done. And so she's seen it from both perspectives, as a state official working with the feds, and now being a federal official working with the locals. The person who can best talk about how she has a great relationship with local law enforcement is Emery Gainey, because he was the liaison. She had a special liaison within her office to make sure that she had a seamless relationship working with local officials. I saw it, but Mr. Gainey is the best to talk about it.
Yes, and Sheriff Gainey, if you don't mind leaning into that, I am out of time, but would love to hear your response.
Thank you, Senator. Unequivocally, that's one of the four leaning rules of Pam Bondi. Work with our law enforcement leaders, learn and understand the issues that each of those face. I mentioned earlier, we are a large state, as you well know. So there are diverse issues that the law enforcement from one end of our state, the others have to deal with. Pam listens to those. She encourages those. She asks for advice, want to know what's happening in the community, just the whole pill mill. And the bath salt issue was brought to her by a panhandle sheriff, quite frankly. What we've learned in law enforcement, we often see these things first. We start seeing these trends, and then we try to get them to our legislative leaders and our cabinet leaders to say, this is happening in our state. Sometimes they listen to us, other times they don't. Pam listened. She listened right away. She immediately sought out to understand what was causing that issue, and then sought legislation to get it done against some of our Republican legislators at the time who didn't want it. But her tenacity prevailed. She got it done. Our state is a safer state because of Pam Bondi.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Senator Schiff.
Thank you. Thank you to all the witnesses for being here today. Greatly appreciate your testimony. Ms. McCord, you testified, thank you for all your good work over the years. You testified before the committee last September on the repercussions of Trump versus the United States, the case on presidential immunity. You wrote, I think in your written testimony, there's nothing stopping a president from directing the investigation of his political enemies, journalists, or activists, even where there is no basis for doing so. As you will recall from the hearing yesterday, I asked Ms. Bondi a number of questions about what her intentions were, how she would respond if the president asked her to investigate someone.
Just a little fun story. And by the way, somebody asked earlier if when I cut in, does the video keep going? No, I stopped the video. So a really cool story. A buddy of mine who was, a patriot like me about 30 years ago, I reckon now, had gotten arrested on a false vehicle code charge, and he won his case on appeal. But the prosecutors, because they're, Fullerton, California, like ridiculous, went ahead and issued all these warrants and stuff. And he had all these stale warrants for his arrest, even though he won his appeal. So I flew back to California just recently and represented him pro per, and got a finding of factual innocence, got the case tossed. But Shifty Schiff's, the guy who Shifty Schiff replaced, because Adam Schiff, the biggest piece of shit in the United States government, give me a bunch of ones if you agree, a lying, pathological piece of human whale shit, Adam Schiff. The guy he replaced got his judgeship back. So I had Shifty Schiff's the guy who Shifty Shift replaced as my judge. And so I brought my daughter with me, and I said, Your Honor, my daughter wants to know if she can get a picture taken. And so it was really cool. I got to go up behind the bench, and my buddy who I represented in that case took photographs of me and that judge. And it was just a kind of a cool story. And hopefully he'll get his seat back, because Adam Schiff is beyond question one of the biggest pieces of human whale shit on the planet. Give me a bunch of ones if you agree he's garbage. He should have never been anywhere near anything that has to do with our government. I hope you guys all agree. So, but that was a really fun experience. And I'll go ahead and I'll keep playing it. Now, guys, I did promise, my kids that I would take them out for lunch. So I don't know if we're going to get through this whole video today, but I'm going to keep playing it until I get somebody telling me, hey, Dad, we got to go kind of a thing. All right. Because I can tell you guys are having a good time. Give me a bunch of ones for the show today, guys. Double tap that screen, hit that like and subscribe button, and make sure to always save my videos for later viewing, because we have a lot of fun here on Team MPE, Team Michael Paul Eline. Remember, if you have any questions, throw me a super chat, even if it's $1. If I see that little yellow or red thing, I'll pop it up. And make sure to support my channel any way you can, even if it means buying a membership. I have a bunch of cool videos in the back channel that I don't share with the general public for my paid subscribers. And I'm always looking to get new members of Team MPE. And for those of you who don't know me, I do personal injury law. I'm licensed in California and Texas. I do catastrophic injury claims. I have one of the largest settlements in motorcycle accident cases in American history, over $10 million in a motorcycle accident case. And I primarily do catastrophic injury. My love is natural law, the Bill of Rights, the Constitution. And that's what Team MPE is all about, teaching people about natural law. And we're looking at Pam Bondi, who I believe is a threat to the Second Amendment and to our unalienable fundamental rights of self-defense. So I'm sure the Democrats in this channel are super happy that she'll get appointed, because, they don't support the Second Amendment. And then the Republicans probably hate me because, hey, she's Trump's choice and Trump can do no wrong kind of a thing. So it's just interesting, the dynamic, how that works. But let's get into it. I'm going to keep playing the video for as long as I can. I'm going to make a quick freaking doggone head call there, and I'll be back. But you don't really need me. It looks like every time I talk, I go from 500 or 600 viewers down to like 300. So obviously, Michael Eline isn't the reason you're here. You're here to talk to each other and probably have me come in every now and then so you can take a potty break. Give me a bunch of ones if you agree. Anyways, let's get back into it.
Whether she thought there was a factual predicate for a case, for example, an investigation against Jack Smith or Liz Cheney. For the most part, she refused to answer any specific question. Didn't give me a lot of confidence in her willingness to push back against those kind of improper orders from the president. What should the Attorney General do? If a president is now, by virtue of this dangerous Supreme Court decision, immune from prosecution from violating the law and using the Department of Justice to do it, it doesn't mean the Attorney General should go along with it. What should the Attorney General do if the president says, I want you to investigate such and such political opponent?
Well, first of all, I would say the immunity decision right now, as far as we know, applies only to the president. And so there's no immunity for Attorney General Bondi if she were to engage in illegal activity or unconstitutional activity in carrying out a directive of Donald Trump. But I think before we even get to that, it would be important for her to make clear that she is not going to direct her department attorneys or the FBI to initiate unfounded investigations. If they're as departments of justice throughout all of my tenure there, always we followed the facts and the law and did not target any person for investigation based on political reasons. So it's really, that's why the independence is so much more important even now in the wake of that decision, because she is the first person to have a position of standing up to the president.
I also asked Ms. Bondi whether she would commit to preserving the evidence that was gathered as a part of the January 6th investigation by the department. She refused to commit to even preserving the evidence. Are there laws in place, or is it merely department policy not to destroy evidence? Should we have any confidence that that evidence will be preserved?
Well, there certainly are Federal Records Act obligations that require the records be maintained. And so I think that she would be well advised to consult with attorneys, career attorneys who specialize in the Department of Justice, and be guided by their counsel. And it's certainly important in this case, as in these cases, as in every case prosecuted by the Department of Justice or investigated, to maintain records.
And if I could ask both you and Ms. Gilbert, recusal question. So Ms. McCord, maybe let me ask you about where you think the circumstance would be appropriate for her to recuse herself vis-a-vis her prior representation of the president. And Ms. Gilbert, in terms of her corporate clients as a lobbyist, when would it be appropriate for her to recuse herself from working on or influencing department decisions vis-a-vis her former lobbyist clients?
Senator Schiff, I think with respect to her previous, personal representation of Donald Trump, she needs to be very concerned, as William French Smith was when he took on this job for President Reagan, having been Reagan's personal attorney, that anything that would appear to be improper, that would show impartiality, she should recuse from. So, for example, investigations into anyone who was involved in the first impeachment proceedings or prosecution, because she defended Donald Trump in those proceedings. Even any investigations or prosecutions into those involved with the cases against Donald Trump, because she has made public statements about prosecutors and investigators needing to be targeted potentially. She's used the term the bad ones. I'm not sure what that means in legal parlance. So I think these are the types of matters, including also civil matters. There is Donald Trump has, through his attorneys, filed notice of a civil action against the Department of Justice based on the search of Mar-a-Lago. Clearly, it would be improper for her to take any part in that, in responding to that case.
Thank you. And I just would like to note that obviously yesterday she clarified that she'd never represented President Trump in a personal matter, but actually worked there directly with the White House. Also, it's interesting because we have seen this body confirm members who have lobbied for the Chinese Communist Party and confirmed them to positions at ODNI. And it didn't seem that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle had an issue with that. And it's also interesting that we continue to hear General Sessions being brought up at these hearings over and over again. I do want to remind people, obviously, he is from the great state of Alabama, but not one member of the Democratic Party in this actual hearing voted for him through his confirmation process. So I just want to make sure that we set the record straight on that as well. But thank you to all of our witnesses.
I know I'm out of time.
Yes.
Would it be possible for the other witness to answer? She didn't have an opportunity because the clock ran out.
I think we are out of time, but I appreciate that. Thank you. And thank you to our witnesses for testifying today. I know that some of you traveled long and hard to be here, and we are grateful that you did that. The record will stay open until 5 p.m. tonight, and so if you would like to add something to that, you are more than welcome to. And all written questions are due at that time as well. The hearing is adjourned.
Hold on. All right, guys. Well, that was a good time. We ended up getting about 705 people in the chat between Twitter and YouTube, and it looks like we had some really cool discussions, and that's what I like. I just like seeing discourse. I'm not into just banning people because they disagree with your politics. We've got a wide variety of people in here from all different walks of life. Thank you, Brett Ray, for showing up and always supporting the channel and the mission of Team MPE, which is to push natural law and natural rights onto the youth and making sure that they understand that all of our rights come from an all-powerful creator, not the state, not the government. Another great channel for you guys to check out is the 10th Amendment Center. Mike over there is a buddy of mine. He's a good guy. And the other one would be Classical Learner. Now, tomorrow, my intention is to bring you some of Brett Pike's videos and get into a little bit about tariffs and how the United States originally was funded by tariffs and not a direct tax on your income, which is a Marxist thing. It's income tax is evil. Taxing someone, punishing someone based upon their success is evil. With a tariff, you have the ability to buy or not buy. And what happened is when I was growing up, America still was a manufacturing economy, but evil politicians basically with trade agreements, getting money from foreign countries to help their personal gain, pushed all of our manufacturing out of the country, and we became a service-based economy. And if we get rid of a direct tax on income, we can abolish the IRS, probably the most evil organization on the planet, and we can start returning America back to the constitutional republic where people aren't discriminated against based upon how much money they make. And then what we could do is force manufacturers to return back to the United States. Why? Because rather than pay the tariff, they'll just come back here and they'll start paying American workers. And that's what we want. Give me a bunch of ones if you agree. So we'll do some videos about that. We'll talk about tariffs. We'll talk about returning America back to the constitutional republic and destroying the last vestiges of Marxism and the administrative bureaucrat state. And by the way, most people that I talk to would love to see these ABC agencies abolished. I mean, we saw the letter carriers union, the guys who deliver the ballots, give all their support to Camel Toe Harris, and then they're finding like ballots in trash cans in the Republican red areas. I mean, come on, guys. I mean, you don't think that 99% of government employees are far left Democrats? You got to be kidding me. And that's why the other half of the country doesn't like the administrative state, because there's still another half of the country that's not Democrat. And in order for us to get along, we all have to be able to trust our government, not just the ones in power, not just the ones who control all the agencies, like Adam Schiff and his buddy Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, who got those bogus FISA warrants and spread these false bullshit narratives of that somehow Donald Trump was a Russian agent, right? I mean, give me a break, guys. So, we want all Americans to trust the administrative agencies, not just half. So what better way to do that than to severely curtail and eliminate most of them? Give me a bunch of ones if you agree that the administrative bureaucratic state has grown too strong and we need to severely curtail the administrative leftist Marxist bureaucratic state. Give me a bunch of ones if you agree. So tomorrow, that's going to be something that we talk about. And hopefully you guys will join me. If I can go live, I'm going to be busy. I'm going to try to make it to the gym in the morning. I do appreciate everybody showing today for this show. Let me see here. So thank you for showing Danny K. Thank you for showing Twisted Sisters. Hold on a minute. Twisted Sisters, and let me see here. Chaz Lebrecq, Life Under the Microscope. Thank you for supporting the channel. Thank you, guys. Yeah, well, Amber, do you really think Lawyer Dog is a libertarian? Last time I checked, he supports the welfare state. So that, to me, that means you're not a libertarian, but okay. I'm a libertarian. I believe in abolishing the administrative agencies and self-reliance. We can have private charities that look after each other. We don't need the government doing that. All that does is create another paid government job that's going to vote for a political party that supports big government, which is exactly what our founding fathers did not want. That's a true libertarian. Now, Chaz Lebrecq, thanks for showing up. Big fella, 1998. I appreciate you showing up. J&G, thank you for coming. The Jasaris Paints, love having you on the show. Let me see here. Who else? Salty Buckeye. Yes. Well, Salty Buckeye, I agree with you about that. But the problem is that the courts have upheld that it is, although we know that it's profit severed from capital, which means a corporation, that's not how the administrative state and a lot of judges have interpreted it. So if you don't pay it, you're going to get hit with willful failure to file. So why not just abolish these administrative agencies, right? and return back to a tariff-based system and get rid of the income tax, which basically punishes people and leaves people in fear that they're going to be audited. I mean, you realize how expensive it is to fend off an audit? Hundreds of thousands of dollars. So that's why people choose to pay whatever these blue-haired mafiosos that work at these administrative agencies tell them to pay. Dangerous, very dangerous. And Chaz Lebrecht, you're probably right. I don't think he is going to get rid of these agencies, unfortunately. I think that Donald Trump is a traditional Democrat. He's a Northeastern liberal Democrat who has some conservative Democrat ideas. And I think that he was able to hoodwink the religious right and to a large degree people who think like me, libertarians, that he was going to uphold the Second Amendment. And I freely admit I am a single issue voter. I vote based on the Second Amendment. So very disappointing indeed. Pam Bondi, I don't think is a good pick based upon her positions on the Second Amendment. Give me a bunch of ones if you agree. Now, let's see here. And Jasoris Paints, well, it wasn't capitalism that sold those jobs. It was the administrative state and politicians that sold those jobs. The income tax, and then these treaties that these politicians made in order to enrich themselves, the same way that they're enriching Eastern European countries and then getting money laundered back to their political campaigns, can be traced back as far as the Clintons, when General Charlie Tree of the Communist Chinese Army was bringing in suitcases full of cash and giving it to Hillary and to Broom Hillary and Slick Willie. So crony capitalism maybe, but true capitalism doesn't involve selling our business overseas. Trust me, once you start putting tariffs on these foreign countries, they're going to start bringing our manufacturing jobs back. And then we'll make Michigan Motor City again. Let's make Michigan Motor City again, right? Motor City again, Michigan, and we can do that with a tariff-based system. Now, Brett Ray, I do appreciate you coming by again. Westman 78, Cirrus. And Cirrus, I don't know what you mean about those questions, what this guy thinks about Jews. The guys who gave me my start in law, 99% of them were Jewish or identified as Jewish. And I would fight for them tooth and nail if somebody tried to discriminate against them the way the Nazis did. So the way that the Democrat Party's doing by endorsing Hamas, for example. So let's see here. But anyways, Joe Moore, thanks for joining me. Salty Buckeye, Amber Sakura, Rooster Cogburn, love that name. That was one of the best movies ever. John Wayne, all the way, baby. KRAR, thanks for coming. Miss Z, thank you for coming. It's a cool name. Good health to everyone. Absolutely. Let's see here. Sadhu Berry, Old America. That's right. Old America. Chaz Lebrecht. Well, Chaz, I think he knows what's going on. Yeah. But Amber Sakura, Jody Shiloh, thank you for supporting my channel, ma'am. Means a lot to me. And let's see here. Michael, thanks for the ones. Man, so many people in here today, guys. Like, dude, we had almost 1,000 viewers in here and I didn't even have to really say anything. But one thing, give me a bunch of ones for my cool Punisher shirt, guys. And patriotism is not a crime. Do you agree or not? Give me a bunch of ones if you agree that patriotism is not a crime. I want to see it. Bunch of ones. Patriotism's not a crime, guys. Patriotism is not a crime. Give me a bunch of ones. Give me a bunch of twos if you think patriotism is a crime. BZ Watchdog, good seeing you, brother. And right on, Avery. Me too, man. I vote for those principles and values every day, bro. And Westman 78, thanks again. And yeah, everybody, I just recommend that you go back and look at the Articles of Confederation and the Declaration of Independence to get an idea of what our founders really believed, and stop falling for the administrative state. Stop thinking that welfare is okay and that all the, this Ponzi system, Social Security. Trust me, if everybody just started working, get their own businesses and start forming parallel systems and supporting Team MPE, the same way that Martin Luther King was able to get his people to rally around him, we wouldn't need the administrative state. The Amish are able to do it. The hardcore Mormons in Utah are able to do it without government assistance. It's your duty to help each other, but you have to find a reason to do it. So why would you want to just give people free things and invite criminals into your country? Not a good thing. So let me see here. Roger Lane, good seeing you, man. Thank you for supporting the channel. Tonya Neal. Let me see who else. And Lawyer Dog, you obviously don't know anything about the history of America, because the income tax that you support is a Marxist idea. And a true libertarian would support tariffs, because that way the people who are selling us goods pay the taxes, and we basically can restore the constitutional republic the way our founding fathers intended it. That's all it is, guys. Get rid of the Jekyll Island monstrosity and the banksters that Lawyer Dog supports, and start supporting the constitutional republic. You can have one or the other. You can't have both. All right. And Twisted Sisters, no doubt about that. Somebody who's got their like a fence rider, in my opinion, like, a fence rider, somebody who's got their foot in the administrative state halfways and halfways in the republic. A true libertarian would never support the things that this guy supports. But Amber Sakura, thank you so much. And you should go back and rewatch and make sure to save, because you never know when the thought police are going to take down this channel. And then Tracheotomy, thank you. The Balfour Declaration. That's a conversation you can have on another channel, bro. That's a little too political for me. And that's a British monstrosity. And it's simply a declaration. It never was law. So I don't even want to get into that. That's not my deal. And Avery, absolutely, we should make America free again. And Westman, Sadhu, Roger Lane, $20, man. Thank you, bro. I appreciate that. Another supporter of Team MPE, helping me make the internet great again. And so, Roger, I'm going to do my best to do a show tomorrow about the libertarian ideals of tariffs and why we need to abolish the Marxist income tax and return America back to freedom. And maybe you guys can help me by telling Lawyer Dog to stop watching CNN and Communist News Network and actually learn about what our founding fathers wanted for this country, instead of just parroting stuff that he probably heard on some leftist college campus, that Trump wants tariffs and therefore they're bad. That's one good thing about Trump, is the tariff idea. If we got rid of the income tax, you could choose not to pay the tax by not buying the product. It's that simple. At least you'd have a choice. And that means more freedom and less government. Give me a bunch of ones if you agree. Now, Tonya Neal, KRAR, you were awesome. Patriotism's not a crime. That's right. And I think that helping people destroy the country in the name of patriotism is a bad thing. But you guys should always be armed. Should always be armed. Here, let's, since I'm not allowed to touch it, I can just show you my favorite. If you just take a look underneath my monitor over there. So that's my favorite. That's a stainless steel FNP 45. And it's a buddy of mine in Marsauk sold that to me. He actually got that from one of the representatives of FN who came by one of their bases. But it's the same one, the original one that the Navy SEALs were testing. And it's stainless, so you can take it in the ocean and it won't corrode. So one of my favorites, 15 rounds of FU plus one in the chamber, so 16 rounds of holes in you, if you want to play around with Team MPE. Hoorah! And so let's keep going here. And by the way, if any of you guys from Team MPE want to come and hang out in Nevada sometime, at least one retired Navy SEAL, one of my buddies from Marsauk, we go out sometimes on BLM land, and we set up shoot house, with 2x4s. So if you want to do some room clearing and just have some fun, learn some CQB tactics, we'd be more than happy to have you guys come out and learn some basic CQB, some basic close quarter battle techniques. I help female RAPE victims learn how to defend themselves. And we also have a buddy of mine who does a concealed carry course. So we can all work together to make sure you get your CCW, your concealed carry weapon permit. And then I plan on having Alan Beck on sometime this week where we talk a little bit about the recent Ninth Circuit cases. Alan Beck works with my firm, and he's the guy who introduced me to Dick Heller. Hey, Brick, good seeing you, bro. And Dick Heller is District of Columbia versus Heller. And so we're all big time pro Second Amendment. But unlike talking about the Second Amendment, we actually litigate Second Amendment rights cases, and we stand tall for the right to keep and bear arms, not just for the government or the military, but for all free men and women, that they have the ability to defend themselves against all the illegal alien invaders that Biden flooded our country with, that were released from prisons, as well as people who want to do you and your family harm, who are homegrown. So you have and as well as any enemies, foreign and domestic. And I think you guys know what that means. Anybody who tramples on your rights. So we're all about the Second Amendment, but we're about it from a natural law perspective, that the Second Amendment is simply a recognition of a pre-existing right that was granted to you by your creator. That's all it is. It's not something that the government gave you. It's a recognition of a pre-existing right granted to you by your creator. Give me a bunch of ones if you agree. Because if you do, that means that you understand the Second Amendment. So let's get, raw cannon. Yes, got motivated right now. I saw an 0311 right there. Freaking doggone 03. Hey, where'd you go, bro? Were you a West Coast Marine? Were you a Hollywood Marine, or are you at Camp Lejeune? Where'd you go to SOI? I don't know what they call it now. I think they call it like Advanced Infantry AIT or something. They always are changing it. So my series was one of the first series to have to go to MCT. They just started MCT like 88, 89. And so for some reason, they were making all the 0311s go to both. So I had to go to MCT as well as School of Infantry, which is weird. But now I guess the modern Marines, if you're like a Pogue, you only go to MCT. But if you're an 03, you don't go to MCT. You go directly to SOI. And I learned that from a buddy of mine who's a sergeant major. He just got out. And I was like, what? That's wild. Yeah, because I had some young Marines say, hey, you're bullshitting me. Infantry guys don't go to MCT. And I was like, what are you talking about? That was normal back then. But yeah, you can Google it. It's true. Back in 88, 89, all the 03s had to go to MCT as well as SOI. Kind of weird. Hey, what's going on, OTVO? That's OTVO. Good seeing you, brother. That's right, Brick Jonesy. Good seeing you, man. Guys, give me a bunch of ones for Brick Jonesy and Let's OTVO. Make sure to like and subscribe to their channels and support them as well. These are good guys, legit. And Brett Ray. Well, Brett Ray, there's no question about that. Not all veterans are good people, but most Marine veterans that I know are cut from a different cloth. We joined because, number one, it's mainly because of family. Like if your father was in the Marines, and we're really big time supporters of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. That's why most of us joined the Corps, at least when I went in. It was a very patriotic decision. We know it was the hardest boot camp. They steep you in the traditions and history of America. They really teach you the history of the Corps, Chesty Puller, John Bassalone, like Smedley Butler even, who was like anti-military industrial complex, a holder of 2 medals of honor. So the Marines have a tradition of rebelling against authority that's evil and supporting authority that's good. And so the Marine Corps is definitely a totally different branch. But I agree, there's bad people in all walks of life. But I believe that the Marine Corps has people who are just different. And you join the Army, you join the Air Force, you join the Space Force, you join the Coast Guard, you join the Navy, but you become a United States Marine, and you're a Marine for life. And that's why I still train. That's why I still try to stay in shape. And that's why I still train firearm CQB, because it's part of who I am as an American. You guys, hopefully you understand that. Most Marines do. All right. So, well, Let's OTVO. I just don't get it how he can call himself a libertarian when he supports the administrative state and open borders and flooding our country with criminals like that's okay. Our founding fathers never intended that. They were smart enough to know that you can't have a country without a border and without some way to identify who the people are who are coming into your country, to vet them, to make sure they're not a threat. I mean, look what's happened to the United Kingdom. Flooded their country with a bunch of jihadists who want Sharia law. The locals, their daughters are getting massacred and attacked by these people because they're upset that their daughters don't wear hefty bags like in the countries they come from over their bodies. So it's very, very dangerous. Oh my gosh, I just got $5. Who is this? Who did? Christy. Okay, hold on, Christy. Let me find your comment so I can get it up there. Looks like I'm scrolling up to find you, Christy. Hold on, let me go down. There you are. All right. Guys, give me a bunch of ones for Christy. U.S. Navy combat veteran, Bagram 2010, just stumbled on your channel, work with Army, Marines, and Air Force. I agree with you, Christy. You know, I'm always going to be, you know, all about the Marine Corps. And you know that if you were in the Navy. But God bless you, Christy, for supporting Team MPE. And yeah, you know, I have a lot of friends. I've got special reconnaissance corpsman buddies. I've got a buddy of mine who was U.S. Navy SEAL, who was a combat corpsman, and then he switched over to the SEALs. He went to the same BUDS class as Eddie Gallagher. So I've got I work heavily with the disabled veteran community, Christy, and I have a nonprofit called the Paul E. Line Memorial Ride, and I work with the Leathernecks Motorcycle Club, as well as the Marine Riders. They support the mission of the Paul E. Line Memorial Ride. My father died from Agent Orange. He was a Marine as well. He did 2 tours in Vietnam. And I was also a Marine. I'm also disabled from the Marine Corps, 70%. And I'm all about the veteran community because I just think for the most part, they're just better than civilians. Give me a bunch of ones for you vets who agree with that. Now, let's see here. Guys, I do have to get going, man. Follow me. I'm the infantry. Arrah, Brett Ray. Yeah, follow me. Infantry leads, man. Infantry leads the way, brother. Life Under, I can't say I disagree with any of your comments. Cirrus, my great-grandfather was a Marine in EWO. So Cirrus, one thing, just so you know, and I'm not like trying to insult you, but whenever you spell Marine, it's always with an uppercase M. Okay, because Marine, you're referring to, we're not soldiers, we're Marines, and it's an uppercase M, just so you know for the future. I know you don't mean any insult, but most Marines, when they see it spelled in lowercase, are just like, civilian. Like, at least identify yourself as somebody who knows. Now you know. If you don't know, well, now you know, you know. All right. So, and then thank you again, Let's OTVO, for pointing out to our Marxist communist buddy Lawyer Dog that he's got his head so far up his ass that he only can smell himself. And then Chaz Lebrecht, thank you. Thank you, Tonya Neal. And thank you, Rooster Cogburn. And Raw 1506 right there, man. Bravo bastard. I'm loving it, dude. The 1506 infantry. Bravo bastard. I'm loving it. So in the Army, they call you guys 11Bs. In the Marine Corps, infantry is 0311, or, well, it could be an 0331, like a machine gunner, but the 03 designation means that you're infantry. That's the difference. And then let's see here. Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, Christy again. Christy, it's totally cool, brother. Marines are awesome. They get shit done. They call Navy the Uber driver. My bad. No, you know, Christy, we make fun of each other, but you guys know, like, you know, like Marines will kill for the doc. That's one thing, you know, like a Navy medic is to us. You guys rock, man. And we don't like the relaxed discipline of the Navy, but let's face it, guys, if we didn't have other branches with relaxed discipline, there would be no standard with which to judge the Marines by. And I think everybody knows that Marines have the highest standards of military discipline of all the branches. And that's why guys like me, like the extreme alpha males, go for the Marine Corps, because we want to be the best. We want to be disciplined. Typically, we're troublemakers. We've gotten fights all the time in school, and the Marine Corps squares us away and gets us ready. After that 4 years of being a permanent Lance Corporal, a terminal Lance Corporal, right? A terminal E3, as you guys say in the Army or the Navy or the other branches, because we don't go by pay grade in the Marine Corps. We just call ourselves Lance Coolies. It gets us ready to be released into the civilian world. And let's face it also, that per capita, non-commissioned and enlisted Marines beyond a shadow of a doubt, are the most successful businessmen per capita of any other branch of anyone in the world. Enlisted Marines in particular are the most successful entrepreneurs and businessmen of all of the branches combined. And we also hold 2/3 of all the medals of honor, even though we're the smallest branch. So it's just a little tidbit about the Marine Corps that makes us a little different. I'm always going to brag on the Marine Corps because we're the best. Then girly men like Lawyer Dog can make stupid comments and show what a fool they are. But the bottom line is that this guy couldn't even probably fight his way out of a wet paper bag. But we got to make room for beta males on my channel too, so they can act like little girls and act like little sissy la-la men. Right, guys? Give me a bunch of ones for sissy la-la boy. All right. So Aussie Babe, love having you. Westman, love having you. I know he's just been brainwashed by the administrative, educational, industrial complex. He doesn't know any better. He just knows what mommy and daddy, college professor, have told him. But Lane Myers is the man. By the way, guys, make sure to support Lane Myers. I'm a financial contributor, and I support his cause, lock, stock, and barrel. And I would love nothing more than to see him, keep kicking ass and keep winning. That's what it's all about, guys. Anyways, with that being said, you're welcome, Kevin. You rock, bro. With that being said, make sure to like and subscribe. Make sure to save, because we never know when the thought police are going to take down this channel. Semper Fi, do or die.